Chapter 435. Translated by Hypersheep 325. Edited by Mike. Here, when he held the book in his hand, it felt very real. There was even a faint fragrance of ink that entered Lin Tian Nan's nose. Since the judging rules could even create such a complete universe, creating such a realistic book was extremely easy for it. Lin Tian Nan naturally did not need to be surprised at this. Flipping open the ancient book, there were densely packed words and pictures made of strange materials. This was the method of making the magic tool. The method of making this magic tool was very exquisite, but it was completely different from the magic tool making system that Lin Tian Nan knew. It was also completely different from the magic tool making system that he knew. Clearly, it did not come from Luo Fan. Instead, it was a method created by another innate god himself. Flipping through the book, Lin Tian Nan finally understood why this magic tool needed a living being to successfully make it. To think that someone could come up with such a strange idea. It seems that the world is big and full of strange things. Lin Tian Nan couldn't help but exclaim. This magic tool clearly relied on the creator's ability to communicate with the heavens and earth. From the unseen world, it pulled a projection of the unparalleled path and sealed it into the magic tool. The unparalleled path was a supreme existence. Even if it was only a projection, it contained an unimaginable amount of power. The simple ability to think was naturally created by this projection. However, because it was a projection of the unparalleled path, this kind of thinking would never grow into a complete consciousness. Because of this, the magic tool with this kind of simple thinking could not have any other power, no matter if it was attack, defense, or support. After looking at it for a while, Lin Tian Nan knew that before he broke through the 9th layer of life changing and entered the Sky Martial realm, he would definitely not be able to successfully make this magic tool. He could only sigh helplessly and put away the book into his sea of knowledge. He planned to wait until he had the ability to refine this magic tool before doing so. This spiritual network was formed by connecting the spiritual consciousnesses of many living beings. It was naturally impossible for ordinary living beings to take away the items within the spiritual network. But for Lin Tian Nan, who had reached the 6th layer of life-changing realm, he only needed to bring them into his own sea of knowledge. After accepting the magic tool refining method, Lin Tian Nan no longer talked about the magic tool. Instead, he paid more attention to the changes in the spiritual knowledge network over the years. Mu Shuan and the others usually didn't feel it, but now that they were talking about the spiritual network's development from nothing to today's blossoming and colorful process, they suddenly felt some wondrous enlightenment. Everyone present was a person with shocking potential. Even those with slightly weaker potential were people with extremely high cultivation realms. As he spoke, he felt this wonderful feeling and knew that there seemed to be some hidden opportunities that were beneficial to their cultivation. However, he didn't change the topic and continue to talk about the changes in the spiritual sense network. As they spoke, Gu Ling suddenly came to a realization. An aura of enlightenment emanated from his body, and his eyes became incomparably deep, as if he had seen through some indescribable truth. "Isn't this another kind of creation of the heavens and earth?" he cried out. These words caused Mu Shuan, Lei Jiuxiao, and Lin Tian Nan to feel as if they had just woken up from a dream. They instantly understood where this opportunity came from, and why they felt as if there was a hidden opportunity that was beneficial to them. "So that's how it is," they all said at the same time. At the same time, they fell into a strange state of enlightenment. A spiritual sense network was changed from a chaotic state by the thoughts of many living beings. Gradually, it became clear and turbid, turning into a virtual world that was based on the virtual world. It evolved into countless complete laws that could allow living beings to live and communicate with each other, forming a different kind of complete law. In this entire process, if one changed the environment, changed the foundation, and slightly changed the situation, what difference would it be from creation of the heavens and earth? Even if this kind of creation of the heavens and earth was extremely different from the real world, it was still creation of the heavens and earth. The entire process revealed a trace of the mysterious mysteries of creation of the heavens and earth. Although it wasn't much, if a cultivator could comprehend this mystery, it would definitely be extremely beneficial to their cultivation. Lin Tian then only listened to the others' descriptions and naturally didn't feel as deeply as the others. Although he seemed to have gained some enlightenment from the entire process of creation of the heavens and earth, what he gained was much less than the others. After a few days, he awoke from the enlightenment. He felt that his cultivation had improved slightly. It was as if the circulation of the true qi in his body was much faster and smoother than before. Even the purity of his true qi had increased slightly. When he opened his eyes and saw Mu Shuan and the others daydreaming, Lin Tiannan's eyes were filled with envy. However, it only lasted for a short while. After a short while, he suppressed this envy. With a slight thought, his body left the platform, but he didn't directly return to his body, whether it was the virtual world or the primordial world. This spiritual sense network had undergone such a huge change, so he naturally wouldn't let it go. Instead, he began to casually wander around the spiritual sense network. Because of the existence of Dharma artifacts with simple thoughts, there were many fixed platforms in this spiritual sense network. Under normal circumstances, these fixed platforms wouldn't obstruct any living beings from accessing them. These fixed platforms formed a fixed network. As long as one could communicate with one fixed platform, they could generally communicate with all the other platforms. There were even some living beings that made the platforms formed by their own spiritual sense judgment rules public. As long as a few special characteristics were met, they could use this fixed platform network to communicate with the platforms formed by the judgment rules, using another method to have limited communication with other living beings. The ones that Lin Tian came into contact with the most in this spiritual sense network were those fixed platforms. After all, although there were only 100,000 fixed platforms, which was very few compared to the tens of billions of living beings, it would still take a lot of time to visit all of them. Moreover, that was enough for Lin Tian to have a complete and macroscopic understanding of this spiritual sense network. Walking past one platform after another, Lin Tian became more and more shocked. The feeling of having his horizons broaden did not fade from the beginning. Each fixed platform was like a complete world. These worlds carried the thoughts of the Dharma artifact refiner, so they were naturally constructed in all sorts of strange ways. Some are like the starry sky of the universe, some are like the underwater world, some are like a sea of fire, and some were even directly illusory, and so on, and so on. Every time he walked past a platform, Lin Tian discovered that his knowledge had increased a bit, and he felt that his understanding of the world had deepened. The monotony, dullness, and boredom that he had felt for thousands and tens of thousands of years gradually disappeared as he walked through this spiritual sense network. The entire world seemed to have become rich and colorful. The loneliness that he felt after coming to the great wasteland was replaced by vitality. So there are actually so many interesting things in this great wasteland. Lin Tian did not know when this thought began to linger in the depths of his mind. Every time he felt a platform, it was equivalent to feeling a cultivator's soul. More or less, he would be able to comprehend the Tao of those cultivators from these platforms. These Tao were not necessarily suitable for Lin Tian, but they had many uses for Lin Tian as a reference. This made Lin Tian feel that his understanding of the Tao of martial arts had deepened a lot because of this Tao comparison, and he felt that his martial realm had deepened a bit. There were tens of billions of people in the Great Wasteland, and at least half of them had complete spiritual senses. However, there were only a few 100,000 fixed platforms. One could imagine how crowded and lively these platforms were. This kind of crowd and liveliness was very rare for all living beings in the Great Wasteland. Even for those who had ascended and their descendants, this was a rare sight. These past few years, they had all gathered in one place to practice the complicated array that Lin Tian had passed down to them. After squeezing and strolling like this for more than 10 days, Lin Tian then finally came back to his senses. He retracted his spiritual sense back into his body in the virtual world and stopped the endless process of strolling around. After sensing slightly, he found that Zhuge Luan and the others were still in a state of enlightenment. He could not help but feel even more envious. It's a pity that I have been cultivating for the past 36 years and did not clearly see the entire evolution process. Otherwise, I would probably be able to have such deep enlightenment. Although he sighed and envied them, Lin Tian then still knew what he had to do. With a thought, his spiritual sense connected to the platform and casually left a message onto the platform. After explaining where he was going, he retracted his spiritual sense. At the same time, he left the virtual world and returned to his original body in the Great Wasteland. After returning to his original body, he did not stop. He immediately circulated his true energy and used the mysteries of the martial scripture to absorb the surrounding chaotic energy that seemed extremely thin, but was extremely dense to Lin Tiannan. Endless pain came from all the acupuncture points in his body, making Lin Tiannan feel as if he had fallen into hell. However, at the same time, he felt his body becoming fuller and fuller. The true energy in his body also changed slightly as the chaotic energy entered his body. It seemed to be increasing, but it also seemed to be becoming purer. The innate energy seemed to become denser and denser. It even seemed as if the true energy was about to seep into his physical body. Lin Tian then had already endured this pain for 3 years. Although he could not be said to have gotten used to it to the point where he did not feel any negative feelings, he did not feel as unbearable as before. In just a few breaths, he entered a deep meditative state and completely lost his perception of the outside world. During this process, a fluorescent light slowly circulated around Lin Tiannan's body. It seemed as if countless complex and mysterious changes were brewing within it. 10 days passed by. For the average location in the virtual world, which was also the majority of living beings that entered the virtual world, more than 3 months had passed. Among the Triluan and the others, Lu Xia was the first to break free from the state of enlightenment. She slowly opened her 2 eyes that were like bright stars. After a long time, she regained her senses and regained her clarity. The aura on her body continuously changed during this process. In the blink of an eye, it became several times more profound than before. It was as if she had comprehended some incredible secret. After Lu Xiao woke up, Tiani also woke up a few hours later. One day, the Triluan woke up. Then, after a full 10 days, Lei Jiuxiao and Gu Ling both woke up from their state of enlightenment at almost the same time. From the time they woke up, the aptitude of the few of them was clear at a glance. However, although the time of enlightenment was different for each of them, regardless of whether they woke up first or later, the aura on their bodies was not small. Even the look in their eyes was more or less different. Clearly, they had more or less improved. A few of them looked at each other and saw each other's changes. They all smiled and casually chatted for a while. After sharing some of their enlightenment, they dispersed and left the spiritual sense network. They even directly left the virtual world and returned to the primordial world. Although the spiritual sense network in the virtual world was good, it was not reality after all. To them, the most important thing was still the improvement of their cultivation realm and cultivation. At that moment, they had already comprehended something. Naturally, they had to transform it into their own cultivation realm. However, they could not spend more time in the virtual world and the spiritual sense network. While countless living beings in the primordial world were obsessed with the virtual world and went crazy, Luo Fan had already arrived in the endless starry sky. There were countless continents in the endless starry sky. Among them, there were more than 100,000 continents with life. Back then, Luo Fan had asked Hong Jun and the others to integrate these continents so that they would not be a burden when the extraterrestrial demons invaded. He did not need them to know any righteousness, nor did he need them to throw themselves into the cause of fighting against the great tribulation of heaven and earth without hesitation. However, At least they would not become accomplices. However, at that moment, after the virtual world was formed, this matter was no longer that important. This was because with the existence of the virtual world, Luo Fan already had a better plan to deal with the extraterrestrial demons. In fact, it was not only the living beings in the endless starry sky that did not need to be paid as much attention as before. Even the various preparations that Luo Fan had made in the past tens of thousands of years had been greatly reduced. It could even be said that it was not necessary. This was also the reason why Luo Fan suddenly had a premonition that the great tribulation of heaven and earth had been eliminated when he thought about building the virtual world. This change made Luo Fan feel relaxed, but at the same time, it made Luo Fan feel rather awkward. At that moment, Luo Fan was floating in the void of the endless starry sky. His eyes were covered, and every continent in the endless starry sky was included in his eyes. The spatial true ear also directly included the endless sounds on the countless continents into his perception range. In the blink of an eye, Luo Fan found the more than 100,000 continents with living beings living in them. Of course, he also found the location of Hong Jun and the others in an instant. At that moment, Hong Jun, Luo Fu, Guang Pu, and Luo Chunyang had already scattered on 4 extremely distant continents. They worked hard, either preaching, subduing, or killing. They used various means to integrate the thoughts of the living beings on these continents, so that these living beings would know how terrifying the great tribulation of heaven and earth was, and how detestable the extraterrestrial demons were. Over the years, the results of their efforts were quite impressive. However, there were only tens of thousands of continents, which was still more than half of what Luo Fan had requested. The unfinished natural array formed by these tens of thousands of continents with living beings required Hong Jun and the others to think for a long time and observe for a long time before they could see it clearly. However, for Luo Fan, it was as simple as 1 + 1 = 2 at a glance. With just a glance, the natural array was directly completed in Luo Fan's mind. Even the various mysterious powers it possessed, as well as the circulation and exchange of its star essence, were all seen through by him without any reservations. This array is quite mysterious. If the number of continents with living beings increases to 129,600, I'm afraid that this array will directly take shape, and these continents will directly change into another space. It may even develop into a complete small kiliocosm, medium kiliocosm, or a large kiliocosm with the passage of time. Such a thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind. In the blink of an eye, he deduced the power of this natural array. Luo Fan felt it was quite interesting. It's an unexpected gain. This method of splitting heaven and earth seems to be much easier than directly opening up the void, but can greatly supplement the formation method scroll and the tool method scroll. With a thought, the natural array was instantly decomposed and turned into endless mysteries of the formation method, which were incorporated into the Tao fruit scripture. In the formation method scroll and the tool method scroll, the formation method scroll and the tool method scroll were instantly enriched. Feeling the enrichment of the 2 scrolls, Luo Fan felt a faint joy in his heart. After the joy, with a thought connected the minds of Hong Jun and the others, who were scattered throughout the endless starry sky through an extremely mysterious connection. Stop what you were doing and come see me. Along with this thought, there was also a way to come here and meet Luo Fan. Hong Jun and the others suddenly sensed a thought reverberating in their minds. In an instant, they knew who had spoken. They all stopped what they were doing, and without hesitation, they immediately turned into rays of light and shot towards Luo Fan. Luo Chunyang, who was the weakest among the 4 of them, had already attained the earthly immortal realm and became an itinerant immortal. Hong Jun had even directly become a golden immortal, becoming the 2nd person in the untainted world. Their speed was naturally not to be underestimated. Chapter 436. Chapter 476, The Terror Reached the Heart of Parents. The drama of sorrow and joy when Hong Jun and the others saw Luo Fan. Although they knew that Luo Fan did not have many requirements on etiquette, they still did not dare to neglect and saluted him sternly. After a simple etiquette, Luo Fan said to the crowd, "There have been many changes in this great tribulation. The integration of the living beings on this star land is no longer an urgent matter. After the great tribulation of heaven and earth, you can slowly integrate them. Take advantage of this period of time to cultivate." When Hong Jun and the others heard what Luo Fan said, they could not help but show a relaxed expression on their faces. However, it soon turned into an indescribable surprise. Relaxing was the most natural thing to do. After all, the few of them had been constantly moving about the various continents in the endless starry sky over the years. They had been thinking hard, spreading their teachings, and slaughtering almost all the time. The pressure they felt from shouldering the responsibility for the safety of the world's calamity naturally went without saying. At this time, when they heard that there was no need to integrate the living beings on the star land in the endless starry sky, how could they not feel relaxed? As for the surprise, it was even more natural. After all, Luo Fan had always been omniscient about the past and the future. His instructions had always been the most correct, without any omissions or mistakes. At this time, he suddenly gave up the original arrangement, which was enough to cause a great impact on their minds. Of course, even with such an impact, they did not have the slightest doubt about Luo Fan. They just thought that there must be an earth-shattering change in the world. They were more surprised and more confused about what kind of changes had happened in the untainted land after staying in the endless starry sky for thousands of years. Naturally, Luo Fan did not have the mentality of a secular master who wanted to maintain omniscience in front of his disciple. Even if he was wrong, he would not admit it. At this time, after speaking, his mind was calm, without any trace of unnaturalness. "Don't ask too much. Follow me into the untainted land, and you will know the whole story." Luo Fan smiled faintly. Hong Jun and the others bowed and agreed in unison. Seeing this, Luo Fan smiled slightly. With a wave of his hand, a force acted on Hong Jun and the others. Then he took a step forward, and with a shake of his body, he disappeared in the endless starry sky. When he appeared again, he crossed an unknown distance and appeared directly at the top of Buzhou Mountain in the northwest of the untainted land, in front of the search cave. Stepping into the untainted land, Hong Jun and the others felt a murmur suddenly ring in their ears. The voice was exceptionally soft, but it was enough for them to hear clearly. It was a mantra to communicate with the virtual world. Obviously, the virtual world was touched by their auras and naturally transmitted the mantra that Luo Fan had sent into the Yellow Springs network into their ears. This was the hidden mystery of the mantra that Luo Fan had inserted into the Yellow Springs network. The Netherworld network covered the entire underground of the untainted land. It covered the entire world and naturally formed an extremely mysterious comprehension of nothingness. In this domain, if Luo Fan did not control it, any living being that entered or was born would naturally trigger the incantation hidden in the Netherworld network. It would echo in the living being's ears several times until the living being remembered the incantation. Hong Jun and the others were slightly stunned. Although the voice was extremely soft, they could easily tell that it was Luo Fan's voice. However, it was obvious that it did not come from Luo Fan. Instead, it came from a void. This unprecedented matter made them think of the change that Luo Fan had mentioned previously. Although the voice was directly transmitted into the ears of Hong Jun and the others, with Luo Fan's ability, it was naturally impossible to hide the voice from him. Seeing the subtle changes in everyone's expressions, he smiled and said, "These days, I have built a virtual world in this world, which can provide hundreds of millions of living beings to communicate with each other. This incantation is the key to enter the virtual world." As he spoke, a yellow-turbaned strongman came out of the cave abode and led them into the Seeking Cave. Although Hong Jun and the others could not wait to enter the virtual world to take a look, they still followed the yellow-turbaned strongman to the depths of the cave abode. After sitting down, they listened to Luo Fan's instructions. Luo Fan looked at these disciples who had already achieved something and felt quite emotional. He thought of the desolation and loneliness when he first came to the untainted land. Now he had several disciples, hundreds of thousands of innate gods under his command, and trillions of living beings and the magic treasures that relied on him to survive. This change was so great that it could not even be described as the vicissitudes of life. After a while, Luo Fan said to Luo Fu and Guang Pu, "Are you still sealing Guo in the returning spirit array?" Luo Fu and Luo Guo naturally nodded. Then Luo Fu said, "That's right. I comprehended the returning spirit array from the Dantian shaping spirit technique that my father passed down. In order to give Guo a better foundation, we sealed him in this array, hoping to use this array to blast open Guo's innate door, so that he would have an innate body from the beginning." With that, he raised his hand and waved it. A crystal clear, round, and unfathomable ball of light appeared in his hand. The light did not have any fixed shape. It seemed to be undergoing hundreds of millions of changes every moment, and it also seemed to be condensing infinite power to bombard some kind of invisible barrier. Seeing this, Luo Fan sighed and raised his hand. The light came to his hand. The idea of blasting open the innate door with the returning spirit array is quite interesting, but it will take too long. This will be of great benefit to Guo in the future, but it's too cruel. Luo Fan sighed. Luo Guo was the daughter of Luo Fu and Guang Pu. However, unlike Luo Chunyang, who was born from their intercourse, she was a fruit that grew from Guang Pu's body and was made with Luo Fu's essence and blood. Back then, in order to wait for Luo Fu to return from cultivation, Guang Pu sealed Luo Guo in the space-time array, intending to wait for Luo Fu's return so that they could raise Luo Guo together. However, after Luo Fu returned from cultivation, Luo Fu happened to comprehend a returning spirit array from the core spirit shaping technique that he cultivated, so he immediately stopped Guang Pu from releasing the seal and letting Luo Guo out. After discussing with Guang Pu and Luo Chunyang for a few years, they even dragged Luo Chunyang into the discussion. Finally, they made a difficult decision, which was not to let Luo Guo out, but to let the returning to origin array formation into the sealing array formation, allowing Luo Guo's body and soul to be remolded in the process. In the end, the innate door would be blasted open, allowing Luo Guo to achieve an innate body, an innate divine soul, and forge a strong cultivation foundation like an innate god. This decision was a very difficult one for the family of three. When they made this decision, they all felt a sense of guilt in their hearts. After all, although Luo Guo did not feel anything being sealed in such a formation, and even if she woke up after thousands of years, she would only feel that a moment had passed, as if she had just slept. However, it would deprive her of the right to fight together with the family of three, and it could also be said that it was depriving her of time. It was precisely because of this that after Luo Guo was sealed, they were unwilling to mention it, even to Luo Fan. Even though Luo Fan had not reached the state of omniscience, he was extremely clear about the various experiences of the people around him. So how could he not know about this matter? However, he thought that Luo Fu had already gotten married and established a career, so it was not appropriate for him to interfere with these decisions. In addition, the great tribulation of heaven and earth in thousands of years would be very cruel, and he did not want Luo Guo to see that cruel scene, so he only pretended not to know. The reason why he mentioned it this time was that the great tribulation of heaven and earth was close to being eliminated. Even if there were still some tribulations, it would not be too cruel. "I'm ashamed," Luo Fu said with a red face. Guang Pu and Luo Chunyang also had ashamed expressions on their faces. Obviously, they also felt that such a decision was unfair to Luo Guo. Although it is the heart of a parent, it is still too impatient. Although it is difficult to cultivate an innate body, it is after all not impossible. Luo Fan sighed. "I'm ashamed," Luo Fu and Guang Pu said at the same time with red faces. Luo Chunyang also seemed to be extremely uncomfortable behind them, and even the aura in his body was slightly fluctuating. One could imagine the great emotional fluctuations in his heart. However, Luo Fan did not really blame them. Just as he said, they also had the heart of a parent, just like the parents in his previous life who had done all kinds of painful things for their children to have a good life. Although their methods might not be correct, no one could doubt their intentions. However, since it has already been thousands of years, it could be considered as laying some foundation. It'd be a pity to give up just like that. Luo Fan waved his hand and stopped the three people who were constantly begging for forgiveness. The eyes of Luo Fu and the others lit up when they heard Luo Fan's words. They knew that Luo Fan must have done something that would greatly benefit Luo Gua. However, Luo Fan did not care about the three of them. Golden and silver light flashed in his eyes, and he had already separated the mysterious and unfathomable light, seeing through all the details within the light. This light was the appearance of the returning to origin formation. Its composition was based on the blood essence of Luo Fu and Guang Pu. Every line on the formation contained the husband and wife's endless efforts. Based on their original strength, it would take at least a few decades to set up this formation. Moreover, there would be a period of nearly 100 years after it was set up, and it would require constant cultivation to truly replenish it. Although he was already aware of this, Luo Fan still could not help but sigh when he saw it with his own eyes. Inside the formation was the space-time seal formation and Luo Gua, who was in the form of a baby. The outermost layer of the returning to the origin formation directly communicated with Luo Gua's life essence. Under the effect of the formation, Luo Gua's life essence underwent some mysterious and unpredictable changes. It went straight into an incomparably mysterious and profound place and bombarded a faintly discernible, indistinct, illusory door. It was Luo Gua's innate door. This was the effect of the returning to origin formation. Luo Fan's eyes were able to see through the essence, so he naturally saw the innate door. At the same time he saw the innate door, he instantly calculated through the might of the returning to origin formation that with Luo Gua's source of life, she would need at least 1,296 yuan hui to be able to blast open the innate door. 1,296 yuan hui, which was about 167,900,000 years. Luo Fan could not help but sigh when he calculated this period of time in an instant. If he kept waiting like this, even if he was in the Void Wuji Palace, it would still take at least 1,000 years. Luo Fan glanced at the three men and women who looked ashamed. He sighed and shook his head, then casually pointed at the ball of light. In an instant, boundless spiritual light rushed out of his hand and entered the ball of light. After the spiritual light entered the ball of light, boundless chaotic vital energy gathered from all directions toward the ball of light formed by the returning to origin formation. It turned into streams of chaotic vital energy that rushed straight into the ball of light, like rivers flowing into the sea. After the chaotic vital energy rushed into the ball of light, it suddenly collapsed and turned into countless mysterious forces that surged straight into the seal. They entered Luo Gua's body through her acupuncture points and gradually formed a complicated and unfathomable cycle in her body. During this process, it gradually transformed Luo Gua's body and increased her life source through some mysterious and unimaginable method. This allowed the power produced by the returning to origin formation to break through to the Khanate realm to gradually increase. At the same time, the returning to origin formation also began to gradually change under the influence of some invisible force. This kind of change was extremely subtle, but it was also extremely exquisite. It was directly distributed to every area of the entire formation, and every line in the formation underwent an extremely subtle change. But when these changes were added together, the formation gradually emitted a completely different aura from before. In the eyes of Luo Fu, Guang Pu, Luo Chunyang, and Hong Jun, this change was simply like the world had turned upside down. It was so strong that they felt that they could feel it even if they became fools. The ball of light in Luo Fan's hand emitted an aura that was close to the Tao. Looking at the ball of light, Hong Jun and the other three felt that there seemed to be a supreme Tao in it. It seemed that as long as they calmed down and carefully comprehended it, they would be able to comprehend a mysterious technique at the level of creation. The few of them looked at the ball of light in Luo Fan's hand with burning eyes, and their minds were filled with endless desire. Of course, they naturally did not desire to obtain the ball of light in Luo Fan's hand. After all, they were still rational and knew that the ball of light was where Luo Guo was, but it was not a cultivation item. What they longed for was the supreme Tao contained in the light. That was the truth of the universe. Luo Fan naturally did not care about them. With a thought, the spirit reversion formation continued to change, and it constantly adjusted the spirit reversion formation that Luo Fu had comprehended, making the spirit reversion formation that was originally more compatible with the essence core, sculpting mind technique, which was also more compatible with Luo Fu, become more compatible with Luo Guo. After all, the essence core, sculpting mind technique, was created by Luo Fan based on Luo Fu, so it was naturally more suitable for Luo Fu. In fact, it could even be said that it was only suitable for Luo Fu. The fact that Luo Fu was able to comprehend the ancestral reversion formation from this ancestral reversion technique was due to his outstanding comprehension and his deep understanding of the Dantian spirit shaping technique. However, the formation that he comprehended was only a special case of existence. In other words, the effect would naturally be great if it was used on Luo Fu, but if it was used on other living beings, the effect would be reduced by at least a level for Luo Fan, creating the spirit reversion technique was an extremely simple matter, and changing it into a formation was also a trivial matter. Therefore, it only took a few dozen breaths for the ball of light in his hand to stop changing. The ball of light also stabilized once again. With a light wave of his hand, the endless chaotic chi that was gathering from the surroundings was directly cut off, and it disappeared in the blink of an eye. It was as if it had never appeared before. Subsequently, Luo Fan casually put the ball of light into the Wuji Void Palace and placed it on the platform that he usually cultivated on. Hong Jun and the others could not help but exclaim when they saw the ball of light that contained an aura that was close to the Tao suddenly disappear. However, they only reacted after exclaiming. They knew that they had been rude, and they quickly stopped. I've already modified the spirit reversion formation, and it's more suitable for Gur than the formation you set up previously. It will only take 12 Yuan Hui to blast open Guo Er's Khanate door. I'll put it in a magic treasure, and it will only take a year. I'll release it after a year, explained Luo Fan faintly. After he modified the spirit reversion formation, its efficiency increased by more than 100 times. The process that originally needed 1,296 Yuan Hui was directly compressed to 12 Yuan Hui. Compared to the time flow in the Wuji Void Palace that was more than 130,000 times faster, this period of time was less than a year. When Luo Fu, Guang Pu, and Luo Chunyang heard Luo Fan's words, they were extremely surprised. Guang Pu even shed tears and said while sobbing, "Thank you, Father." Guang Pu was Guo Er's mother. After sealing Luo Guo into the spirit reversion formation, the pressure in her heart was even greater than that of Luo Fu. It was only because she knew that Luo Fu also had a great deal of pressure in his heart, so she didn't vent it. At this moment, when she heard that it would only take a year to complete the spirit reversion process that would originally take millions of years to complete, she finally couldn't hold back the emotions in her heart and instantly vented them. Seeing Guang Pu's performance, Luo Fu, who was at the side, felt extremely guilty. He did not care that Luo Fan was above him, and directly hugged Guang Pu's waist, comforting him in a soft voice, at the same time blaming himself. Luo Fan naturally didn't care about Luo Fu's behavior. Seeing that they couldn't help themselves, he just watched indifferently from above. He didn't say anything to interrupt them, nor did he say anything else. After all, Guang Pu was also an earthly immortal who cultivated to the perfected immortal realm, so her control of the mind was by no means ordinary. After a short while, she controlled her emotions and pulled Luo Fu to apologize to Luo Fan. Chapter 437. Luogui. After Luo Fu and Guang Pu returned to their seats, Luo Fan opened his mouth and said, "I've set up 96 million square meters of virtual space in the virtual world. They're combined to form a training ground, representing 96 million inner demons. If he could break through all of these worlds, he would be able to completely break through the 100 Essences heart demon and cultivate his Tao heart to a state of near perfection. All of you have made great progress in the past few years, but the tempering of your Tao hearts is slightly lacking. All of you can directly enter the trials heaven and earth for the next few years. Come find me in 10 years. As Luo Fan spoke, he casually pointed with his finger, and specks of spiritual light rushed out of his hand. They separated and drilled into the Niwen Palace between the eyebrows of Hong Jun and the others. During this process, through some mysterious and unpredictable connection, they directly rushed into their sea of consciousness and became their memories. Hong Jun and the others only felt their minds tremble, and there was an additional mantra in their memories. This mantra belonged to the same system as the mantra that had appeared in their ears before, but it looked completely different. However, they did not need to think too much about it. They immediately knew that this mantra was definitely the same as the mantra that connected them to the virtual world. It was the key that allowed them to connect to the trial world. He bowed to Luo Fan and said, "This disciple, son, grandson, understands and will not disappoint you." Luo Fan nodded. With a thought, a few yellow turbaned strongmen came forward and led everyone away. The Seeking Cave was extremely mysterious. The number of rooms in it could be more or less, and it could fit as many people as they wanted. Hong Jun and the others naturally did not have to worry about not having a place to stay. After everyone left, Luo Fan closed his eyes. His body gradually emitted an aura that seemed to have become one with the world and the supreme Great Tao. In the blink of an eye, the entire virtual world was completely displayed in his mind. At this moment, the virtual world had just taken shape. Lin Tian had not even met Lei Jiuxiao and the others yet, but the changes in the virtual world were not much different from when he had just constructed it. Luo Fan carefully sensed this virtual world, simulating its development and deducing the rules and settings of this virtual world. Through these various methods, he fine-tuned the virtual world, making it more complete and mysterious. Under the leadership of the Yellow Scarf Strongman, Hong Jun and others each found a quiet room and scattered around the cave house. They began to run the mantra that Luo Fan had sent directly into their memories. Although this mental cultivation method contained endless profundities, it was not difficult to cultivate. For Hong Jun and the rest, they only needed to think about it, and they would be able to cultivate the mantra. In an instant, the few of them felt that a trace of their consciousness was separated and directly entered an incomparably wonderful world through some mysterious and profound connection. In a trance, in a daze, they forgot that they had entered this place by circulating the mnemonic chant and forgot about the trial of heaven and earth that Luo Fan had mentioned before. They regarded this incarnation condensed from their thoughts as their main body and regarded this incomparably wonderful world as the real world. They began to encounter all kinds of temptations from their inner demons. Time passed by slowly. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed. On this day, Luo Fan, who was sensing the virtual world, trembled and slowly opened his eyes. The gold and silver luster in his eyes were exceptionally warm and deep. "Is Fu outside?" he asked. "Yes, I am with Junior Sister." Luo Fu's respectful and nervous voice came from outside. "Come in." Luo Fan smiled and said. As soon as he finished speaking, a reply came from outside. Then 2 figures came out. It was Luo Fu and Guang Pu. "I already know why you're here. Take it." Luo Fan smiled and said. As he spoke, he waved his hand, and a ball of mysterious light appeared in his hand. It was the returning to nature formation that had sealed Luo Gua. However, compared to a year ago, there were many changes to the formation. The biggest change was that the ball of light had become extremely calm. The originally fluctuating and trembling feeling, as if it was attacking an invisible and intangible existence, had completely disappeared. There was also a connate aura that did not exist a year ago. Even the aura of the ball of light, that was originally like a supreme Tao, could not conceal this connate aura. Luo Fu was the creator of the returning to nature formation. Although this formation had been modified by Luo Fan a year ago, it only increased the efficiency. There was not much change in the essence. Therefore, when he saw the change in the ball of light, Luo Fu instantly understood that the returning to nature formation had been completed. In other words, Luo Guo's connate door had been blasted open by the returning to nature formation. Father, did we really succeed? Luo Fu's voice was trembling. He reached out his hand, wanted to take the ball of light, but not daring to do so. It was very strange. Beside him, Guangpu was inexplicably excited. Tears of joy rolled down her cheeks, as if they could fall at any time. Luo Fan smiled and nodded. With this nod, the tears in Guangpu's eyes finally fell completely. Even Luo Fu was inexplicably excited and felt that he could not control himself. Receiving the ball of light with trembling hands, Luo Fu could not wait to grab both sides of the ball of light. He looked for a mysterious opportunity and suddenly tore it with force. The ball of light collapsed silently, like it was made of sand. It instantly turned into countless tiny specks of light that were like dust. The specks of light dispersed in all directions, covering the sky and covering the earth. It made the quiet room in the depths of the cave seem very mysterious. In the midst of the specks of light, a murmur that sounded like someone talking in a dream could be heard. The sound was cute and crisp, but made Luo Fu and Guangpu even more excited. Then, a figure slowly extended and expanded from the light until it finally turned into a 3-year-old child. Then, it slowly landed on the ground in the light. The child was a little girl. She looked like she was carved out of jade. Her whole body was overflowing with a strong, innate aura. She wore a red dadu, and her eyes were blurry, as if she had not woken up yet. I slept so comfortably. A young and cute voice came from her mouth. Guangpu finally couldn't hold it in any longer. He clasped his hands together and hugged the little girl tightly in his arms. "My baby, mother, why are you crying?" The little girl slowly woke up and asked in confusion. "Mother is happy. Mother is happy," Guangpu said incoherently. At this moment, although her tears kept flowing, her face was full of a happy smile. Luo Fan looked at the happy scene of the family of 3 reuniting after a long time, but his expression was indifferent. After a while, Guangpu's mood slightly calmed down. Together with Luo Fu, she brought Luo Guo to greet Luo Fan. Luo Fan smiled and said, "You don't have to be so polite. Guo is also my granddaughter. Today, Guo has achieved perfection, so I will give her a cultivation manual." As he spoke, he casually pointed his finger, and a little spiritual light rushed out of his hand and instantly drilled into the mud pill palace between Guo's eyebrows, who was looking at him curiously. Guo could not react in time. She only had time to let out an "ah," and then her eyes were blank. Amidst the blankness, there seemed to be countless words, diagrams, and countless exquisite and mysterious runes pouring down like a waterfall. Guo has now achieved an innate body, and can also be called an innate deity. The cultivation method that you are cultivating is not suitable for her to cultivate. This technique of Tianyuan Fairy is enough for her to cultivate to the step of attaining the earthly immortal realm. Luo Fan explained to Luo Fu and Guangpu, which was rare for him. After a while, Luo Guo came back to her senses and asked curiously, "Grandpa, why does this cultivation method not seem very fun?" "Huh?" After cultivating this cultivation method, you can go up to the sky and down to the ground, move mountains and seas, create things, and change into billions of forms. Don't you think it's fun? Luo Fan laughed. Fun, fun. Luo Guo's eyes lit up when she heard this. Looking at the naive and romantic Luo Fan could not help but be amused. With a wave of his hand, thousands of materials flew out of his sleeve and piled up in his right palm like a small hill. At this time, Luo Fan was already at the peak of Tai Disperser. His cultivation realm was so profound that it had reached an unimaginable level. Now, every time he raised his hand or moved his foot, there was the supreme Tao of heaven and earth contained in it. The cultivation method that could reach the earthly immortal realm only needed a thought, and he could have as many as he wanted. Other than that, no matter how powerful an instrument was, as long as he wanted it, he could casually refine it. Moreover, whether it was the cultivation method that he created with a thought or the instrument that he casually refined, it was not something that a cultivator who had not attained the Tai Dao fruit could create or refine. His eyes swept over these materials, and in an instant, countless combinations flashed through Luo Fan's mind. These countless combinations naturally formed countless kinds of instruments. Luo Fan casually chose, and in the blink of an eye, he chose the combination that was most suitable for Luo Gua. He raised his left hand, opened it, and slapped it down on his right hand. In an instant, the pile of materials that was like a small hill was ignited by the endless flames of the way, and its volume shrank at an unimaginable speed. When Luo Fan's left hand and right hand came into contact, these materials had already shrunk to the size of a speck of dust. In an instant, he put them together between his hands, as if they had completely turned into nothingness. As Luo Fan thought about it, countless mysterious waves were emitted from between his hands. After a short while, the waves completely disappeared, and Luo Fan separated his hands. A little golden light appeared between his hands. This golden light was extremely mysterious, as if it contained all kinds of indescribable existences. The golden light gradually dissipated, and a little person the size of a thumb with 2 wings appeared. This little person looked like a girl, and she was extremely cute. Her 2 transparent wings were flapping rapidly in the air, and her eyes were very lively. When she saw Gua, her eyes lit up, and her figure flashed, and she came to Gua-er's side. She kept circling around Gua-er, and her joyful and excited look was unstoppable. When Gua-er saw this little person, her eyes lit up. She waved her hands and easily caught the little person in her hands. She opened her hands and put the little person in front of her eyes to observe carefully. Her eyes became brighter and brighter, and she turned to Luo Fan and said, "Grandpa, what is this little person called? Give it to me. This is originally a gift for you. As for what to call it, you can think of one yourself." Luo Fan smiled slightly. This little person was, in fact, a celestial instrument with a layer of restriction. The power of this celestial instrument was not too strong at the moment, but its future was extremely bright. If it was refined into a celestial instrument, this celestial instrument could turn into a fairy world. When it was used, it could sketch out a certain range of heaven and earth in the untainted land and be under the complete control of the celestial instrument. Together with Luo Gua's technique of the heavenly primordial goddess, it could exert an unimaginable effect. It was enough for Luo Gua to easily defeat living beings in the perfected immortal realm when she was in the individual immortal realm. Even though it was just a celestial instrument with a layer of restriction, it could contain a certain amount of intelligence, and it could be Luo Gua's companion. If Luo Gua devoted herself to it, this intelligence would grow at an astonishing speed, and it could eventually grow into a treasure spirit even faster. "Thank you, Grandpa." Gua was overjoyed, and she hugged the little person in her arms. "Thank you, Father." Seeing Gua so happy, Guang Pu said to Luo Fan. Luo Fan shook his head and said, "Gua is also my granddaughter. It's nothing to give her a protective, celestial instrument. There's no need to thank me. How many virtual worlds have the 2 of you seen through in this year? Have you reached the 4 realms of the Tao heart?" Luo Fu and Guang Pu looked at each other, looking rather ashamed. In the end, it was Luo Fu who said, "I'm ashamed. In this 1 year, I've only broken through 1,295 illusory worlds, and I still lack the last one to attain the 4th realm of the Tao heart. Junior sister has 3 virtual worlds less than me. In the end, I was still unable to attain the 4th realm of the Tao heart, and I disappointed father. When Luo Fan heard this, he was slightly disappointed. However, it was only a little. Although the 9 realms of the Tao heart were only divided by the innate gods and the time and space illusion according to the virtual world of the trial world, it coincided with the supreme great Tao. Among them, there were 3 realms of the Tao heart. Only by cultivating the itinerant immortal realm would one be able to completely utilize the power and might possessed by the itinerant immortal realm. If one was able to break through to the 4th realm of the Tao heart, one would be able to greatly weaken the bottleneck between the itinerant immortal realm and the true immortal realm, causing the difficulty of breaking through to be reduced by hundreds and thousands of times. On the other hand, the 4th to the 6th realm of the Tao heart was like the 1st to the 3rd realm of the Tao heart to the itinerant immortal realm to the cultivators of the true immortal realm. True immortal realm cultivators had to cultivate to be able to completely utilize the power and various might of the true immortal realm. According to this logic, with Luo Fu and Guang Pu's cultivation at the true immortal realm, they had to at least attain the 4th realm of the Tao heart before their Tao hearts could be considered to have met the requirements. From this aspect, the fact that Luo Fu and Guang Pu hadn't even attained the 4th realm of the Tao heart naturally disappointed Luo Fan. But similarly, it was the first time that Luo Fu and Guang Pu had come into contact with this method of tempering the Tao heart with the help of 12,960,000 mental demons, so it was understandable that they were unable to meet the requirements. That was why the disappointment was only slight, but not very strong. Then let's do it this way. Even though Gua needs to be taken care of by our side, we can't delay our cultivation. Let's go. Yes, we'll definitely work hard. Luo Fu and Guang Pu hurriedly replied solemnly. Then he left with Luo Gua, who was reluctant to leave. The two of them had put all their energy into the heaven and earth trials during this year, and they had long since understood the divisions of the 9 realms of Tao attainment and the meaning within them clearly. There was no need for Luo Fan to say anything, as they already knew how slow their progress was at this moment. Thus, even though Luo Fan didn't speak harshly to them, they could still feel the disappointment that Luo Fan had towards them at this moment, and they felt slightly uncomfortable in their hearts. Even the joy that came from Luo Gua's return had weakened greatly. The two of them had their own thoughts, but they didn't ignore Luo Gua. Along the way, Luo Gua didn't feel anything wrong. She merely frowned, as if she was considering what name to give the instrument. The little person was very happy in Luo Gua's arms. It leaned comfortably against Luo Gua, appearing very docile. The 3 people and the instrument walked like this, returning to the silent room where Luo Fu and Guang Pu were cultivating. Luo Chunyang had been waiting there for a long time. After meeting Luo Gua, he naturally felt indescribable excitement and joy. During this process, Luo Gua also received countless fun things that Luo Chunyang had prepared for her all these years. Though Luo Chunyang had countless children and grandchildren in the lesser 1,000 realms, compared to Gur, they were far from being related to her. This feeling of being related by blood made him love the cute Luo Gua very much. He even wanted to give all the good things he had to Luo Gua. Naturally, he wouldn't be stingy with things that could be done with just a bit of effort. Luo Chunyang was only an itinerant immortal at the moment. Thus, though he had only broken through several hundred illusory worlds to achieve 3 realms of Tao heart, it was already the same as his current cultivation level. As a result, the pressure he felt was far less than that of Luo Fu and Guang Pu. Because of this, he had more time to take care of Luo Gua and play with her. Under these circumstances, after bringing Luo Gua back, the responsibility of taking care of her naturally fell on Luo Chunyang's shoulders. Luo Fu and Guang Pu spent most of their energy in the trial. They only occasionally left the trial to take care of Luo Gua. Luo Chunyang was the opposite of them. After Luo Chunyang and Guang Pu left with Luo Gua, Luo Fan's thoughts moved, triggering some kind of mysterious and unfathomable connection. In an instant, he felt his thoughts fly across billions of miles, arriving above a vast and boundless sea. This place was boundless, and the sea and sky intersected. In a place where it was impossible to tell whether it was the sky or the sea, a dark green rainbow was streaking across the void at an unimaginable speed. Just as Luo Fan's thought descended, the dark cyan rainbow suddenly shook in the air. Without any inertia, it changed from extreme speed to extreme stillness, and directly stopped in the void, revealing another Luo Fan. Luo Fan wearing a dark cyan robe. Chapter 438. Half a step, primordial unity, the magic treasure stopped and floated in the void. As soon as Zhang Xian sensed the intent, he instantly understood everything. With a faint smile, he turned into a streak of light and shot toward the northwest. Its speed was beyond the imagination of all living beings. In the blink of an eye, it traveled hundreds of millions of kilometers. In just a few days, it crossed the entire primordial world from the distant end of the East Ocean and arrived at the peak of Buzhou Mountain, where the northwest heavenly pillar was located. It suddenly landed and appeared in front of Luo Fan. Although the magic treasure had not become a primordial unity mystic treasure, with the support of Luo Fan's will, it could unleash power that surpassed the golden immortal realm. In the primordial world, it was an invincible existence. The magic treasure smiled at Luo Fan. Its body shook and turned into a stream of light that rushed towards the center of Luo Fan's eyebrows. In the blink of an eye, it rushed into his sea of consciousness. There was only a dark green stream of air left where it was originally standing. The dark green stream of air turned slightly and instantly transformed into a beautiful woman. It was the Xuanji child. "Greetings, master." The Xuanji child smiled sweetly and bowed to Luo Fan. Luo Fan nodded and said, "No need to be so polite." As he spoke, he raised his hand and waved gently. The Xuanji child turned into a stream of air again and pounced forward. It pounced on Luo Fan and turned into a dark green robe. After Luo Fan had refined the Xuanji robe several times, it had long become a primordial unity mystic treasure. Its defensive ability was extremely powerful. Even if Luo Fan was not serious, he would not be able to break through its defense. However, it was the most powerful defensive treasure in the primordial world. After Luo Fan built the virtual world, the great tribulation of the primordial world thousands of years later was close to disappearing. Although it still existed, the threat to the primordial world had been weakened to the point where it could be easily dealt with. In addition, the existence of the virtual world caused the distance between the living beings in the primordial world to not be as far as before. As long as one wanted to, they could enter the virtual world and communicate with the living beings. Naturally, there was no need for Luo Fan to release his Dharma treasure to search for innate deities in the boundless sea area. After retrieving the robe of 4 stars, Luo Fan raised his hand and pointed. The Wuji Palace of the Void appeared out of thin air 3 feet above his head. With a turn, it became 30 feet long. Its momentum was rather astonishing, and it emitted a simple and unfathomable aura. Luo Fan didn't stop. He took a step forward and entered the Wuji Palace. He appeared on the platform deep within the strange palace. Sitting cross-legged, he restrained his thoughts and directly entered the sea of consciousness. As his spirit power entered the spiritual world, the eyes of that towering spirit, which had transformed into the shape of a Pangu skeleton, sparkled with a golden and silver light. The spiritual world was still vast and boundless. It was still filled with an indescribable aura, which made Luo Fan feel indescribably comfortable. Looking up, he saw a 3-eyed giant with a human body and a snake tail curled up in front of him. It's time to experience it again. Such a thought flashed across Luo Fan's mind. Then, he entered the 3-eyed giant's body through some mysterious and unfathomable channel. An incomparably powerful and seemingly omnipotent, yet incomparably heavy, feeling instantly occupied his entire mind and spirit. This 3-eyed, human-bodied, snake-tailed giant was a projection of the body of a powerful being from the Julie world, who was able to create a dojo in the chaos. Although this body was generated by the natural will of the world, it still contained immeasurably unfathomable secrets, and wasn't something that Luo Fan could fully control at the moment. At the moment, Luo Fan had turned this body into something similar to a living being with all kinds of methods. However, with his spiritual power, his understanding of the great Tao, and his cultivation, he couldn't perfectly control this body. Because of this incomparably powerful and omnipotent, yet incomparably heavy feeling emerged. With a thought, Luo Fan exerted all of his power to control this body and slowly opened the third eye between his eyebrows. It was like an ordinary person trying to lift a mountain that was thousands of zhang tall. A feeling of being overwhelmed constantly flowed through his mind, causing him to feel that all of his potential was being rapidly consumed. He even felt as if his life was constantly dissipating along with it. However, after all, he had already refined this body into something similar to a living being. Although it was incredibly difficult, he finally managed to completely open the third eye. At that moment, an incomparably mysterious and profound world that contained endless, unfathomable secrets was reflected in this eye. It also passed through this eye into his mind, causing his mind to enter an incomparably mysterious state. In the world that this third eye saw, there was no space or time at all. Space, time, matter, energy, everything interweaved together in an incomparably mysterious and complicated yet equally obvious way, forming layers of heaven and earth, each and every space. The world and the sea of consciousness, the strange palace within the infinite void palace, the medium-class world, the minor kiliocosm, the embryonic form of the minor kiliocosm under the strange palace, the search cave outside the infinite void palace, the entire primordial world, the endless starry sky. There were even countless outer realms spread out in his eyes. This was such a complex and messy combination of heaven and earth, worlds and space. There was even a boundless past and an unknown future. With all these kinds of things laid out, it should be extremely chaotic, making it difficult for people to distinguish them. However, at this moment, Luo Fan did not feel confused at all. In his heart, all of this was so natural. As if it was instinctive, he could easily distinguish everything in front of him. The past, the future, time, space, matter, energy, the endless worlds, and the layers of space. Everything was as clear as the lines on his palm and his eyes, without a trace of doubt. Endless mysteries of the world that he could not understand or even imagine in the past, as well as the supreme principles of the universe, were almost instinctively understood by him. Everything was so clear, so clear. It was as if, at this moment, he had become omnipotent. There were no secrets in the untainted land or the countless worlds that could be hidden from him. This feeling was so wonderful that Luo Fan wanted to be immersed in it forever. Unfortunately, almost in less than a moment, Luo Fan felt that the weight of the eyelids had exceeded the limit that he could support. His vision instantly darkened. At the same time, an indescribable feeling of mental and physical exhaustion filled his mind. At this moment, his consciousness was pulled back to the depths of the sea of consciousness of this three-eyed, human-shaped, snake-tailed body. In the chaotic sea of consciousness, it formed a small, three-eyed, human-shaped, snake-tailed body, curled up into a ball, and fell into a deep sleep. Luo Fan secretly sighed. With a move of his mind, the idea returned to his body through the mysterious and unfathomable channel. As soon as the consciousness returned to his body, he felt that all the power in his body rushed into the world of his sea of consciousness at an unimaginable speed, rushed into his divine soul, and finally disappeared without a trace through some incredible circulation in his divine soul. After half a day, this process finally disappeared. At this time, Luo Fan was already weak and almost tottered. If not for his extremely firm will, he would have collapsed on the platform like a pile of mud. Another half a day passed. Only then did Luo Fan recover his strength and sit up straight again. With a thought, He ran the Dharma power in his body to nourish his body and divine soul. After another dozens of days, he felt that everything had returned to normal. After everything returned to normal, Luo Fan opened his eyes. The golden and silver luster in his eyes flashed with inexplicable helplessness and joy. The helplessness was that he still could not use the three-eyed, human-shaped, snake-tailed giant's eye for too long. The joy was that he had faintly seen the way to break through the Tai dispersal in the previous glance. According to the time of the primordial world, the time that Luo Fan stayed at the peak of the Tai dispersal was only a few thousand years. But according to the time that Luo Fan had experienced, it had been tens of thousands of years. After such a long period of time, there was no progress. Even though Luo Fan's Taoist heart was close to the perfected realm, he was not anxious because of this. Instead, he had a strong desire to break through. At this time, although he had only found the way, he still needed a lot of energy and hard work to break through. However, for Luo Fan, who could not find a way to break through for tens of thousands of years, it was already a very rare benefit. At that moment, Luo Fan calmed his mind, closed his eyes, and slowly immersed himself in the scene that he saw dozens of days ago. Gradually, he entered a state of no one and no me. Time passed, and hundreds of millions of years had passed. In the blink of an eye, it was close to the time that Luo Fan had predicted before, the time when the great tribulation of heaven and earth would arrive. On this day, Luo Fan, who was immersed in the supreme Tao, suddenly returned from the state of enlightenment on a whim. He opened his eyes, and with a slight movement of his thoughts, he knew exactly how long he had been on this platform. I didn't expect hundreds of millions of years to pass just like that. After understanding how much time had passed, such a thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind. The time flow in the Void Wuji Palace was as fast as 133,325 years in the primordial world. As long as 1,000 years passed in the primordial world, it would be more than 130 million years in this strange palace. In this way, from the moment Luo Fan entered the Void Wuji Palace until now, when the great tribulation of heaven and earth was about to arrive, the time in the Void Wuji Palace was naturally hundreds of millions of years. In these hundreds of millions of years, Luo Fan was constantly immersed in the scene that the giant with 3 eyes and a snake tail saw with the help of the third eye. He also tried his best to comprehend the various mysteries that he saw at that moment. After comprehending for hundreds of millions of years, his gains were unimaginable. However, the difference between the Tai scattered number and the Tai true number was also beyond imagination. At this moment, he had already surpassed the Tai scattered number, and even far surpassed it. However, he still did not achieve the Tai true number. At most, he could only be considered a half-step Tai true number. This caused the current Luo Fan's cultivation to be dozens of times stronger than it was hundreds of millions of years ago. However, it still did not meet his requirements. I didn't expect that I would spend hundreds of millions of years to not be able to completely comprehend what I saw at that moment. If there was no Void Wuji Palace, it would be impossible for me to use such a method to improve my cultivation realm. This thought lingered in Luo Fan's mind. With a thought, he retracted his mind and entered the world of his sea of consciousness. At this moment, his sea of consciousness had undergone a huge change compared to hundreds of millions of years ago. Needless to say, the size of the sea of consciousness had increased by several times. More importantly, the various structures and details of the sea of consciousness were more perfect than hundreds of millions of years ago, and more in line with the nature and the truth of the universe. No matter how one tried to distinguish it, as long as one did not know the nature of the sea of consciousness, perhaps no one would be able to discover that the sea of consciousness itself was just an idealistic world. With a thought, he directly entered the 3-eyed body with the snake tail in another corner of the sea of consciousness through a mysterious and unfathomable channel. The sea of consciousness of the giant had greatly changed compared to hundreds of millions of years ago. The spherical world that was originally only a few dozen feet in diameter in the boundless chaos had expanded to tens of thousands of miles in circumference, and its height had reached hundreds of miles. The body with 3 eyes, a human body, and a snake tail that could only curl up like a divine soul had grown to over 10,000 feet tall. Its entire body was fully stretched out, and it was no longer as weak, powerless, and curled up as it used to be. This was all the growth of the will that Luo Fan had sent into the giant's body over the past hundreds of millions of years. However, that was all. The will had grown to its current state. Its strength, size, and scale were much stronger than any Khanate god in the primordial world. However, compared to this body, it was still so weak. In fact, it could only support the body to open its eyes for a few seconds. It did not even have the ability to control the body, to move slightly. If he used the power of his will to control the body, to open for a few seconds, all the growth of the body over the past hundreds of millions of years would definitely turn into nothingness in an instant. The world that was tens of thousands of kilometers in radius would collapse into its original size of tens of feet. The soul that Luo Fan's will had grown would also shrink into its original weak and powerless appearance that could only curl up in the small world. This change seemed unbelievable, but in fact, it was so natural and obvious. After all, the nature of this body was too high. Although the will had grown to such a level, Luo Fan's cultivation realm could not keep up. If he wanted to control this body, he could only burn his own power and his soul. Only then could he push the body to make any movements. It's a pity that I can't even fully comprehend what I saw in that instant. It'll be a waste if I look at it again. Luo Fan sensed the difference between the soul and the body and sighed. With a thought, his will returned to his body. He opened his eyes, stood up, and took a step forward. His figure had already left the void Wuji Palace. Standing in the quiet room in the depths of the search cave, he raised his hand and waved. The void Wuji Palace that had been floating in the void for thousands of years spun and entered his sea of consciousness. With a slight thought, countless lights, shadows, and information quickly flowed through his mind. In the blink of an eye, he had already grasped all the changes in the primordial world over the past thousands of years. I see. I didn't expect that someone could see through the 96 million square feet of virtual world. Luo Fan smiled and took a step forward. His figure instantly disappeared from the search cave. When he reappeared, he was already in the space-time illusion at the foot of Buzhou Mountain. The place where Luo Fan appeared was a small mountain in the northwest corner of the space-time illusion. The mountain was originally very ordinary, but at that moment, the entire mountain was shining brightly. The wind and clouds surged in the sky. Countless rays of light, heavenly flowers, and the sound of the great Tao illuminated the mountain. It was so mysterious and unbelievable. What made the mountain so mysterious and unbelievable was the 33-story pagoda standing on the top of the mountain. That was the purple cloud palace that Hong Jun had painstakingly refined. The person who had seen through the 96 million square feet of virtual world was Luo Fan's eldest disciple, the legendary master of sages, the master of heaven and earth, Hong Jun. At that moment, the phenomenon there had already triggered an intense reaction from the entire space-time illusion. The originally calm space-time illusion flickered with light. Countless rays of light, rainbows, sword lights, and treasure lights lit up from everywhere. They quickly shot towards this place, and in a short while, the surroundings of this small mountain became extremely lively. Those were the many living beings living in the space-time illusion. That's right, they were living beings, not just innate gods. Even in the virtual world, thousands of years were tens of thousands of years. To the space-time illusion, it was hundreds of thousands of years. After such a long time, the evolution of the virtual world had reached an earth-shattering stage. If the virtual world back then was just the embryonic form of another world and just had the characteristics of another world, then the current virtual world had completely become another world. In the process of such changes, there were naturally countless things that were worth celebrating and crying over. There were even countless creatures that stood out, making most creatures revere them. Most of these living beings were not the innate gods born in the primordial world. Instead, they were ascenders or descendants who had ascended from the minor chiliocosm. Because these post-celestial living beings were outstanding, they naturally had the opportunity to enjoy better cultivation conditions. It was very natural for them to enter the space-time illusion to cultivate. Chapter 439. Level 8 of Tau Heart. Blackout for 2 days and 2 nights. Many living beings gathered there. When the innate gods who knew Luo Fan saw Luo Fan's figure floating in the void, they were shocked. Their figures, who had originally planned to continue approaching the Purple Cloud Palace, instantly landed further away from a small mountain. They did not dare to overtake Luo Fan's figure at all. As they did this, those who didn't know Luo Fan didn't know why, but after seeing the reactions of the other seniors, they also stood behind Luo Fan. Luo Fan naturally did not care about them. He floated in the void and quietly watched the endless phenomenon caused by the Purple Cloud Palace. His expression was calm, but his eyes were filled with emotion. With the existence of the Purple Cloud Palace, it was naturally where Hong Jun's temporary training ground was located. The reason such a phenomenon appeared was because Hong Jun's Tao Heart realm was extremely profound during these years of cultivation. After countless tens of millions of years of cultivation, he'd finally broken through the 12,960,000 square meters of illusory world at this moment, and he'd completely controlled all of the 12,960,000 types of mental demons. The training ground was made up of the 12,960,000 square meters of virtual world, and it was closely related to the space-time illusion. When it was first formed, it was in the space-time illusion and used the space-time illusion as its foundation. Therefore, all the changes in the training ground would naturally have a corresponding impact in the space-time illusion. When someone finally saw through the 12,960,000 square meters of illusory world, the space-time illusion was affected and naturally produced so many strange phenomena. It was also because of this change that Luo Fan returned from his cultivation comprehension. This kind of phenomenon lasted in the void for several days and nights before it gradually subsided. When all the phenomena disappeared, a smoke-like aura shot up into the sky from the Purple Cloud Palace. It pierced through the space-time illusion and entered the void. It was as if a pillar of smoke had suddenly appeared in the sky. Although the smoke pillar looked fragile, it was in fact unimaginably strong and stable. Whether it was the surging waves of primordial chi or the astral wind that came out of nowhere, they could not shake the smoke pillar in the slightest. During this process, endless chaotic energy gathered from all over the void and surged downwards. It surged wildly and fused with the pillar of smoke. Then, it rushed down along the pillar and poured into the 33rd floor of the Purple Cloud Palace. The Purple Cloud Palace received the endless chaotic chi, and it shone brightly, as if there was a transparent figure invisible to the naked eye sitting cross-legged in the light. Luo Fan stood in the void and looked at the changes in the Purple Cloud Palace. He smiled and nodded to himself. It was an amazing achievement to completely see through the 12,960,000 kinds of inner demons. Even Luo Fan was only slightly higher than this level at this time. Although Luo Fan was already a half-step Tai true number, his Taoist heart was still in the 8th realm. He was still half a step away from breaking through the 8th realm and achieving the 9th realm. Although Hong Jun was half a level lower than Luo Fan, in fact, the gap was like heaven and earth. But to be able to do this, the depth of Hong Jun's Taoist heart had reached an unimaginable level. It meant that when Hong Jun cultivated the earthly immortal's Tao fruit to the peak of the golden immortal realm, he could use his Tao fruit, his Dharma power, and his divine soul perfectly. It was even to the extent that it would be much easier for him to obtain the Grand Unity Tao fruit. With such a disciple, how could Luo Fan not be satisfied? Another few days passed. Only then did the light gradually disappear. The pillar of smoke that had shot into the sky from the Purple Cloud Palace and pierced out of the space-time illusion, which had attracted the endless chaotic yuanqi of the outside world, also gradually shrank and disappeared without a trace. During this period of time, Luo Fan was naturally very patient. He stood there quietly and waited. For him, although the changes in front of him were quite novel, it was also in line with the rules of space-time illusion. He only needed to think about it for a while to understand it clearly. Even with his eyes, he could easily see through all the space-time changes in the purple cloud palace in front of him. He knew all the changes that happened to Hong Jun in the past 10 days. Naturally, he did not feel bored at all, except for Luo Fan. None of the other innate gods and postnatal living beings left, nor did any of them make any strange sounds. It was impossible for them to know all the details of this change and the meaning it represented like Luo Fan. However, they were all very curious about what would happen next. They wanted to know the meaning of this change, and some even wanted to understand some secrets that were beneficial to them. Under such circumstances, there was naturally no other way to deal with it. On this day, all the abnormalities disappeared into thin air. A silhouette stepped out of the pagoda-like purple cloud palace in a natural and unrestrained manner. In the void, it grew with the wind and grew to the size of a normal person in the blink of an eye. After this person appeared, he raised his hand and waved. The 33-story purple cloud palace shook and rose from the ground. In the process, it shrank rapidly. In a short while, it shrank to the size of a speck of dust. With a dash, it rushed into the figure's forehead and disappeared without a trace. The figure looked around and did not care about the appearance of the many living beings around him. When he saw where Luo Fan was, his eyes lit up and he took a step forward. His figure traversed dozens of miles in an instant and came directly in front of Luo Fan. He bowed in the void and said, "Unworthy disciple Hong Jun greets Master. It's my fault for making Master wait for so long." This figure was, of course, Hong Jun, who had just broken through 96 million square meters of virtual world. Luo Fan looked at Hong Jun, who was more harmonious compared to the last time they met. He was even more satisfied. He raised his hand and waved. An invisible force appeared out of nowhere and held Hong Jun, making him stand up slowly. He said, "You don't have to be so polite. I'm very pleased that you can break through 96 million square meters of virtual world in these years. It's all thanks to Master's teaching." Hong Jun did not dare to take credit and said. Luo Fan smiled and waved his hand. He turned around and said something to the living beings casually, then let them disperse. These creatures had clear eyes and ears. When Hong Jun spoke, they already knew the relationship between Hong Jun and Luo Fan. Those who knew Luo Fan naturally knew Hong Jun's identity, and those who knew Hong Jun knew more about Luo Fan's magical power. Since Luo Fan said so, they naturally did not dare to doubt him. They immediately cupped their hands in the direction of Luo Fan. It could be considered as a greeting. Then they turned into escape lights and rainbows and left. After seeing everyone leave, Luo Fan took a step with Hong Jun and came to the core of the netherworld below. When he came here, Luo Fan said, "You have now killed 96 million kinds of mental demons. This great trial of heaven and earth will no longer be a threat to you. I'll give you the important task of dealing with this heaven's trial. Master, you instructed me to complete it even if I'm smashed into pieces," Hong Jun said without hesitation. Luo Fan smiled and said, "You don't have to be smashed into pieces. According to my deduction, although this great trial of heaven and earth is fierce, they are all extraterrestrial demons. Even if their strength is added up, they are not very powerful. However, because of the great Tao of heaven and earth, they are targeted at the mental demons of all living beings. Now that you have killed all the mental demons, the extraterrestrial demons have almost no influence on you. Come with me." As Luo Fan spoke, he waved his hand, and a light door suddenly appeared in the core of the netherworld. This light flickered with some kind of illusory and real light, and it was faintly discernible. It was also slightly swaying, as if it was connected to some unimaginable place. Luo Fan did not hesitate. He took a step forward with Hong Jun and directly stepped into the light door. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared into the netherworld. As the two of them disappeared, the light door trembled slightly and instantly turned into countless light spots. They scattered in all directions and disappeared without a trace. At that moment, Luo Fan and Hong Jun had already arrived at a brand new world. It was a boundless void of the universe. This is the virtual world. Hong Jun looked at the brand new world in front of him and sensed the aura in the world. That thought flashed through his mind. Hong Jun had spent most of his time in the trial world over the years. However, the virtual world was such a novel thing, and it was created by his master. Even a living being with a Tao heart like him could not help but feel curious. Naturally, he spent a lot of time in the virtual world. Because of that, he was very familiar with the aura of the virtual world. It was not inferior to his connection with the aura of the primordial world. At that moment, although the perception of his real body was different from the perception of his mental projection, he still instantly knew that the aura of this world was the aura of the virtual world. After that thought, Hong Jun could not help but feel extremely shocked. However, at the same time, there was a feeling that it was only natural for him to do so. What shocked him was that the virtual world was originally virtual and void. However, he and his master, who were extremely close to each other, could directly enter this world. Furthermore, it felt so real. And of course, it was even simpler. This matter had happened to Master. So no matter how illogical and impossible it was still very natural. Hence, after Hong Jun's expression changed, he returned to normal. It was as if nothing had happened. It was as if this was just another place in the primordial world. Luo Fan's appearance naturally triggered a reaction from the person who controlled the virtual world. In an instant, a wave of power condensed, and a figure condensed out of thin air. It gradually appeared in front of Luo Fan and Hong Jun. The person was a middle-aged man. His figure seemed ordinary, but in fact, every rise and fall and every line contained some kind of mysterious truth. It had reached the most perfect state. This person's appearance was rather strange. He was somewhat similar to Luo Fan, but he looked more like another person, an old man. This person was the thorn that had gradually changed over the years due to the effect of the primordial spirit's form. When the thorn met Luo Fan previously, it looked like an old man. However, when it broke through the itinerant immortal realm and became a perfected immortal, its primordial spirit transformed into Luo Fan's appearance. Thus, it had the ability to use Luo Fan's cultivation achievements and Luo Fan's position in the primordial world's supreme great Tao. The years that Luo Fan had been cultivating in seclusion were only a few thousand years in the primordial world. However, compared to the virtual world, it had been tens of thousands of years. Compared to the location that the thorn had chosen, it had been hundreds of thousands of years. Under such circumstances, because of the existence of his primordial spirit, his body was affected from the inside out. Gradually, an unexpected change occurred. The age of his appearance gradually decreased. After hundreds of thousands of years, he turned from an old man to a middle-aged man. Moreover, because the primordial spirit was completely based on Luo Fan's appearance, its appearance gradually evolved into Luo Fan's appearance. At this moment, there were already some traces of Luo Fan's appearance. Chapter 440. Luo Fan was not surprised by the changes in Tingta's body. He just casually asked if there had been any accidents in the virtual world over the years. Tingtu answered Luo Fan's question in an orderly manner. The perfection of the virtual world set up by Luo Fan was beyond imagination. Naturally, it was impossible for there to be any problems after thousands of years. In the past few years, Tingtu had continuously discovered all kinds of mysteries of the virtual world. He had discovered all kinds of exquisite application methods that he had never imagined in the rules and settings that he thought he had completely understood. This allowed him to not only improve his Taoist heart a lot over the years, but also increase the use of his own power many times more exquisite than before. Therefore, the answers that Luo Fan received were naturally about how perfect and mysterious the virtual world was. Ting-Tu visualized his primordial spirit as Luo Fan's appearance, and used Luo Fan's cultivation achievements to use all kinds of incredible power. In this case, after seeing Luo Fan, Ting-Tu's primordial spirit would naturally undergo some strange changes, gradually approaching the real Luo Fan. His primordial spirit had originally become a little different from Luo Fan due to the long evolution. Or, it could be said that because of Luo Fan's growth, the difference between his primordial spirit and Luo Fan's true appearance was gradually narrowed. The ultimate goal was to completely eliminate it. Because of this, after seeing Luo Fan, Ting-Tu locked his eyes on Luo Fan. He wanted to remember everything about Luo Fan in his memory, and finally reflected on his primordial spirit. Luo Fan was well aware of this, but he did not care. He just waved his hand and let Ting-Tu follow him. He took Hong Jun out casually and walked in this huge virtual world. This virtual world seemed extremely real. When he entered this virtual world with his mental incarnation, Hong Jun had already felt it. However, it was not until he stepped in with his real body that he truly realized how real this virtual world was. Luo Fan strolled around the virtual world with Hong Jun, but he did not step into the main topic. He only casually explained the mysteries of the virtual world. Through this mysterious scene, he explained the rules and settings, and how the mysterious rules and settings transformed into such a mysterious scene. Hong Jun was a little surprised, but he was certain that there must be a reason for Luo Fan's actions. He also patiently listened to Luo Fan's explanation. Along with Luo Fan's narration and explanation, Hong Jun felt more and more the mysteries of this virtual world. He gradually became immersed in it and forgot his original intention of coming to this virtual world. He truly put all his attention into Luo Fan's various explanations and narrations. In this way, he had gained some enlightenment. He had comprehended many of the mysteries of the primordial world's rules, and his control over his own Dharma powers seemed to have improved. Hong Jun was not the only one. Even G2, who had stayed in this virtual world for tens of thousands of years, was enlightened. He compared the contents of Luo Fan's explanation with what he had comprehended over the years, and he had a deeper understanding of the true meaning of the infinite rules that Luo Fan had imparted to him back then. He even vaguely grasped the rules of the rules. Under such circumstances, he naturally would not interrupt Luo Fan's explanation. Amidst Luo Fan's narration, time slowly passed. In the blink of an eye, several months had passed. On this day, Luo Fan, Hong Jun, and G2 arrived at a very strange star system. There was a rather huge star in the center of the star system. There were 36 planets in the entire star system, and only 3 of them were suitable for ordinary living beings. However, all 36 planets were suitable for cultivators to cultivate. These 36 planets formed a natural formation in the void, vaguely containing the true meaning of all the rules and settings of the virtual world. They could also make use of the rules and settings of the virtual world to unleash destructive powers. The natural array formed by the 36 planets was not set by Luo Fan when he set the rules of the world. Instead, after the virtual world was formed, the various rules interacted, and the countless stars in the world influenced and pulled each other. Even Luo Fan couldn't help but marvel at such a mysterious star system. He couldn't help but admire the structure of these 36 planets. In an instant, he sensed that this location was the location that he had been searching for in the virtual world for the past few months. He took a step forward and brought Hong Jun and Ting-Tu to the center of the galaxy, above the star. The star emitted endless light and heat at all times. Its temperature was so high that it was many times higher than a legendary nuclear explosion. The amount of virtual energy emitted at every moment was enough to kill any cultivator who had attained the Tao. However, the light and heat emitted by the star posed no threat to Luo Fan, Hong Jun, and G2's day. As the flames licked them, their expressions did not change at all. They did not even use their power to resist it. It was as if they were standing on flat ground. Luo Fan was already a half-step primordial unity, and he was almost invulnerable. Hence, the flames and heat naturally could not affect him at all. Although Hong Jun was not as good as Luo Fan, he had also reached a level close to the peak of the golden immortal realm. Although he was not invulnerable, his body's endurance was naturally strong. Hence, the flames and heat could not affect him at all. G2 had the lowest cultivation level among the three of them, only at the true immortal realm. However, he had stayed in a virtual world for tens of thousands of years. He also had a deep understanding of the rules and settings of the virtual world. Under such circumstances, he could naturally borrow some of the rules and settings of the virtual world. Even if it was only a superficial borrowing, it was already very easy for him to resist the light and heat. Luo Fan silently deduced in his heart. After a while, he said, "It's here." With that, while Hong Jun was puzzled and G2 was enlightened, he raised his hand and waved it lightly. Then, countless silk threads appeared out of thin air and instantly sprang up the 36 planets and 108 satellites in the galaxy. These silk threads were mysterious and inexplicable. They were not the kind of silk threads that Luo Fan used to condense with vitality when he set up formations in the past. Instead, they were constructed from countless thin and dense characters, numbers, runes, talismans, and other information carriers. In the blink of an eye, an incomparably huge network connected the 36 planets and 108 satellites of the galaxy. A strange domain was formed in an instant. After the domain enveloped the galaxy, it began to spread in all directions at a speed that was beyond the imagination of all living beings. In just a few minutes, it had already enveloped the entire galaxy. In the entire galaxy, hundreds of millions of galaxies were enveloped in this strange domain. The inside of this strange domain flickered with golden light. Countless streams of data filled it like rays of light, but they were not dazzling. They only dyed everything in the domain like a dream. Chapter 441. Chapter 481 of the main battlefield, the golden light flickered for a long time before gradually fading away. After the golden light faded, the entire galaxy seemed to be separated from the entire virtual world, but also seemed to be separated from the entire virtual world after the golden light faded. The entire galaxy seemed to have been separated from the entire virtual world. Hong Jun's perception was not very obvious, but Ting Tu, who had lived in the virtual world for tens of thousands of years, could feel it. The moment the domain was formed, Ting Tu realized that the power of the entire virtual world seemed to be concentrated in one place. At this moment, the power that could erupt from the galaxy had reached an unimaginable level. Even if he came here, he would not be able to withstand the impact of the evolution of the natural power of the galaxy. This strange feeling was unbelievable to Ting Tu, who could freely enter and exit the black hole in the virtual world. It made him feel an indescribable shock. Luo Fan smiled and said, "This is the battlefield with the extraterrestrial demons." Hearing Luo Fan's words, both Hong Jun and Ting Tu's eyes lit up, and a look of enlightenment appeared in the depths of their eyes. In just an instant, the two of them understood what Luo Fan's previous actions meant, and they also understood the true meaning behind Luo Fan's creation of such a virtual world. At the same time, Ting Tu understood many of the infinite rules that Luo Fan had passed to him that he thought were unnecessary and incomprehensible. Of course, there were still many things that he did not understand, and there were even many things that he thought he understood that he did not understand now. With this realization, Ting Tu's eyes gradually flashed with doubt. Naturally, Luo Fan did not care about Ting Tu. He cared about Hong Jun, and he wanted to give Hong Jun a heavy responsibility. Ting Tu came here because he wanted to. If he understood, Luo Fan would not be happy about it. If he did not understand, he would not be kind enough to explain it to him. Moreover, the number of these rules had reached the point where it was beyond the limit of numerical description. Even if he wanted to explain them one by one, the difficulty was beyond imagination. It would probably take him tens of millions of years to explain them. Luo Fan did not have the time. This disciple understands. From today onwards, This disciple will oversee this place. After all, Hong Jun's cultivation realm was higher. He understood the true meaning of Luo Fan, telling him this, and bowed. That's exactly what I mean. Luo Fan smiled. As he spoke, he raised his hand and pointed. Boundless spiritual light turned into a river of light that rushed out of his hand and poured into Hong Jun's forehead. These rays of light contained countless characters, images, runes, talismans, patterns, and so on. They were all carriers of information. The information contained within was the rules and settings of this virtual world. Moreover, those rules and settings were at least twice as many as the ones he had passed on to G2. These are naturally not the incomplete rules he had passed on to G2 back then. Instead, it was because the rule settings that he had passed to Hong Jun now contained more application methods of rule settings. The most important thing was the mysteries of the natural array formed by the 36 planets and 108 satellites, as well as the various characteristics and application methods of the strange domain that enveloped the entire galaxy. At this time, Hong Jun was far inferior to Luo Fan in terms of cultivation realm, and even the cultivation of the Dao Heart was a world of difference. However, he had already reached the 8th realm of the Dao Heart after all, and he had reached the peak of the earthly immortal realm. Seriously speaking, his cultivation of the Dao Heart was also on the same level as Luo Fan, although the gap between the levels was a little huge. Therefore, although his ability to withstand the impact of the information was far inferior to Luo Fan's, it surpassed all the Khanate gods in the primordial world. Even G2, who visualized his primordial spirit as Luo Fan, could not compare to him in this aspect. In this case, although the amount of information that Luo Fan poured into Hong Jun's sea of consciousness was huge, it only made Hong Jun feel that his divine soul was greatly impacted and that his divine soul was about to explode into countless fragments. In the end, it did not explode. After all, it still contained the infinite information. This process lasted for a full 3 days and 3 nights. After 3 days and 3 nights, Luo Fan retracted his hand. The spiritual light that was like a long river instantly stagnated and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. After the long river of spiritual light disappeared, Hong Jun was still standing there. His expression was a little dull, and his eyes were a little blank. In a trance, there seemed to be countless words, patterns, runes, talismans, patterns, and other information carriers pouring down from his pupils like a waterfall. After an unknown period of time, Hong Jun let out a long breath and came back to his senses. However, it seemed that there was something more in his eyes than before. It seemed that nothing around him could hide from his eyes. Everything in front of him was as obvious as looking at the lines on his palm. With a wave of his hand, the endless flame below was like a solid plasticine, and it was grabbed by him into a ball of thousands of feet. And under the effect of some power in the void, it was instantly compressed into a lotus the size of a human head. The entire process was unimaginably natural. It was as natural as a planet revolving around a star, as natural as a star would naturally emit heat. There were no signs of human intervention. Seeing this, Luo Fan smiled slightly. He knew that Hong Jun had roughly digested the information that he had inserted into his divine soul during this period of time, and he was quite satisfied. Hong Jun held the lotus as if he was holding a real lotus. Although the lotus was formed by endless flames, the heat was restrained. When he held it, there was no heat emitted at all. It was like an ordinary plant, and it looked very mysterious. After playing with it for a while, Hong Jun waved his hand and dispersed the lotus, turning it into endless flames that spread in all directions and returned to the star below. After that, he bowed to Luo Fan and said, "I was happy for a moment. Master, please forgive me." Luo Fan shook his head, but he didn't care. He said, "It's okay. Now that you can completely control this demon-killing field, you should know what to do." "I understand." Hong Jun nodded respectfully and said, "In that case, you stay here and guard. There will be great changes in a few years. Don't be careless," Luo Fan said lightly. "Yes." Hong Jun accepted the order. Although G2 was confused, he still knew about the great calamity of the world. When he heard the conversation between Luo Fan and Hong Jun, his heart skipped a beat. He knew that the great calamity of the world would arrive in a few years. In an instant, he felt an oppressive feeling emitting from the depths of his mind, as if a storm was coming. He even felt that breathing was a little difficult. Although Ting Tu was an innate god born in the untainted world, he had stayed in this virtual world for a longer time. The flow of time in most areas of the virtual world was 12 times faster than that of the untainted world, but there were some places where the flow of time was much faster. Ting Tu had been given the rules of the entire virtual world by Luo Fan. Naturally, he could deduce where the flow of time was faster. It was not difficult for him to randomly choose an area where the flow of time was thousands of times faster than that of the untainted world. Under such circumstances, his feelings for this virtual world were higher than for the untainted world. When he heard that this river system was going to be the battlefield between the untainted world and the extraterrestrial demons, he didn't feel much. After all, it would happen many years later, so it was not urgent. But now, after hearing that it was only a few years later, he felt the strong pressure and finally realized how deep his feelings for this virtual world were. He was actually a little reluctant to use this virtual world as a battlefield. Ting Tu stood there for a long time. His expression kept changing, as if he had opened a dye shop. Finally, after an unknown period of time, he finally figured it out. He opened his mouth and let out a long breath. A wry smile appeared on his face. After all, the virtual world is just a virtual world. When he came back to his senses, he looked around and realized that Luo Fan and Hong Jun had left. At this moment, he was the only one standing on the surface of the star. With Ting Tu's qualifications to control this virtual world for tens of thousands of years, he naturally had some extraordinary power in this virtual world. Therefore, with just a thought, he was able to bring the entire river system into the range of his divine sense and instantly reconstruct the river system in his mind. At the same time, he also discovered Hong Jun's location. This river system had a radius of hundreds of thousands of light years. Its area was so vast that it was probably extremely impressive even in the untainted world. In such a huge area of the river system, there were hundreds of millions of stellar systems, and there were dozens or hundreds of times more planets than stellar systems. Naturally, there were many planets with all kinds of living beings. Most of them did not have complete spiritual consciousness and were all kinds of low-level living beings transformed from the invisible talisman ghosts. However, many of them had evolved from the living beings transformed from the invisible talisman ghosts, or were living beings with complete spiritual consciousness transformed from the invisible talisman ghosts. Moreover, there were definitely a lot of them. With so many living beings, when facing the endless extraterrestrial demons in the future, they would definitely be an unexpected, unstable factor. Luo Fan wanted to use this place as a battlefield. As the controller and guardian of this area, Hong Jun naturally needed to understand everything about this battlefield and eliminate all possible unstable factors. It was not necessary to kill all the living beings with complete spiritual consciousness, but at least he had to take some protective measures. While Ting Tu was investigating, Hong Jun was doing this. Ting Tu sighed and shook his head. He took a step forward and crossed a distance of countless light years in an instant, arriving on the planet where Hong Jun was. After greeting Hong Jun, he began to help Hong Jun with all kinds of work. Chapter 442. Both Ji-Tu and Hong Jun were great mystical beings. Hong Jun had rich experience in integrating living beings, so it was naturally easy for him to do that. The demon-killing domain was now completely under Hong Jun's control. On the other hand, Hong Jun had been given the rules of the entire virtual world by Luo Fan. Although he still could not fully understand the true mystery of the rules and could not make perfect use of them. However, with the help of various conditions, it was very easy to build an area in the demon-killing domain where time flowed hundreds or thousands of times faster than the outside world. Because of that, although Luo Fan said that there would be a huge change in a few years, Hong Jun was not in a hurry. He was not flustered because of that. Instead, he casually swept the intelligent living beings that he felt could be useful into the area where time flowed hundreds or thousands of times faster than the outside world. G2's control of the demon-killing domain was naturally not as good as Hong Jun's. However, he was an existence that understood the rules of the virtual world. He could teleport at will. Therefore, he was not slower than Hong Jun. Just like that, the two of them continued to move among the billions of planets in this galaxy, collecting all sorts of intelligent life forms and shifting them around to change the void environment. Gradually, this huge demon-killing domain that covered the entire galaxy started to change visibly. The living beings that they threw into the area where the flow of time was thousands of times faster than the outside world also changed under Hong Jun's will. They gradually turned into the form that he needed and produced countless powers that he needed. The virtual world was completely different from the primordial world. The various mystical abilities, dharma spells, and powers in the virtual world were naturally completely different from the primordial world. With Hong Jun's ability, even if he had a domain of the same level as the demon-killing domain in the primordial world, it was impossible for him to casually change living beings and make them produce all kinds of magical mystical abilities. It was the same even if he was extremely familiar with these mystical abilities. However, there were no such restrictions in the virtual world. All mystiques, spells, and special abilities were based on the laws of heaven and earth and the supreme great Tao. The laws of heaven and earth and the supreme great Tao in this virtual world were the rules that Luo Fan had followed when he had constructed this virtual world. Since Hong Jun had already obtained these rules, it was equivalent to obtaining the laws of the world in this virtual world. In this devil-killing domain, which was completely under his control, he could naturally use these endless rules to bestow various divine abilities, dharma arts, and special abilities to life. Although this river system was huge, Hong Jun and G2 were still very powerful. A year in the primordial world was also 12 years in the virtual world. The entire galaxy had been plowed by Hong Jun and G2's day. They had thrown all the living beings that Hong Jun needed into the area where the flow of time was thousands of times faster than in the outside world. It was even to the extent that all the living creatures had been changed by Hong Jun. They were given all sorts of unbelievably mysterious abilities and powerful abilities. After that, Hong Jun said to G2, "I'll leave the rest to you, fellow Taoist." G2 had advanced and retreated together with Hong Jun for the past 12 years, so he had already formed a deep friendship with him. He also knew Hong Jun's various plans. Hearing Hong Jun's words, he did not hesitate and immediately nodded, saying, "Fellow Taoist, don't worry." Hong Jun's ability had already reached the golden immortal realm and was even close to the peak. Although G2 was an innate god that Luo Fan had asked Fantion to invite, he was considered to be of the same generation as Luo Fan. He was of the same generation as Luo Fan, but after all, he was only in the realm of true immortals. In addition, he respected Luo Fan as a Tao master, so he could only call him friend. Hong Jun bowed to express his gratitude. With a shake of his body, he took a step forward and stepped into the area where the flow of time was thousands of times faster than in the outside world. That was an area with the natural star system as the center, affecting the surrounding 365 star systems. The area was about 300 light years. This area was extremely small compared to the entire galaxy, but it was enough for any living creature to struggle in it. After this galaxy was covered by the demon-killing field, it had been isolated from the outside world. Even though G2 was in this demon-killing field, he needed to expend more energy to maintain his connection with the spiritual consciousness network if he wanted to contact the outside world. Moreover, what he was going to do next was to build a base outside this galaxy. Therefore, G2 directly left the demon-killing field and came to the void outside the galaxy. With a slight thought, he grabbed the stardust in the void and continuously gathered them in one place. Gradually, it condensed into a larger and larger land under his feet. The void seemed to be empty, but in fact, it was filled with many small stardust. With G2's understanding and control of the virtual world, it was very easy to gather them. After condensing the stardust within a radius of thousands of light years, the land under G2's feet had grown to a radius of millions of miles. It floated in the void. Although it looked extremely small, and compared to the huge demon-killing field behind it, it was as small as a negligible speck of dust. It was enough for billions of living creatures to stay on it. G2 looked at this land and casually waved his hand. The various bumps on the land, due to the condensation, were instantly smoothed out. They even formed squares one after another, as if they were made of bricks and tiles. The whole land was boundless. When the starlight shone on it, it looked like another starry sky. Looking at this land, G2 was satisfied. With a thought, he communicated with the spiritual sense network that had become extremely flourishing, rich, and perfect. He used the highest authority to send a message to all living beings in the entire spiritual sense network, which was also the entire virtual world. In this message, he used an emotionless tone to describe the true meaning of the virtual world. He also indicated the existence of the demon-killing field in this location. He called on all living creatures who were willing to contribute to the primordial world's great tribulation to come here and face the great battle a few years later together. Although the content of the message was very little, the authorization to use the spike was too high. No matter how hard the living beings tried to block it, they could not stop it. What's more, the message from the spike contained many images and all sorts of information about the demon-killing domain. Hence, after the spike finished sending out the message, countless living beings expressed their desire to rush over. Seeing this, G2 was naturally very satisfied. Although the demon-killing field was extremely mysterious and was under Hong Jun's complete control, it was only a field after all. At most, it could only be used as a battlefield. It was practically impossible to rely on this domain to annihilate all the heavenly devils. No matter how profound this domain was or how powerful it would definitely have a flaw. This flaw naturally didn't matter much on the battlefield, but if it was used as an offensive technique, then this flaw would be rather fatal and couldn't be utilized. Under such circumstances, countless living creatures were naturally needed to fight. Chapter 443. Demonic cultivators. Below, the mystical abilities of the various living beings were of different sizes and strengths. They were also at different distances from this place. Naturally, it was impossible for them to rush over with their own abilities. If that was the case, some living beings would probably have to spend hundreds of thousands of years to rush from all over the virtual world to outside this galaxy. Fortunately, although G2 could not control the entire virtual world as completely as Hong Jun could control the demonic killing domain, it was not a big problem for him to use the rules of the virtual world to create some space portals. At that moment, hundreds of millions of portals appeared out of thin air in various parts of the universe of the virtual world. Then, as light flickered, hundreds of millions of living beings directly traversed the void and appeared in the huge platform formed by the endless stardust gathered by G2's day. The living beings of the primordial world who had reincarnated in this virtual world were naturally extremely powerful due to the control of the rules. These living beings who had intentionally come here to fight for the primordial world naturally had the ability to survive in the void of the universe. Therefore, although this was only the void of the universe and there was no air on the platform, it did not affect the survival of many living beings. In the blink of an eye, the originally spacious platform was filled with creatures of all sizes. Although most of these living beings had connate Tao bodies, their sizes were all different. Only a few of them were small. Ordinary living beings were several times, tens of times, or even hundreds of times taller than ordinary people. Giants that were hundreds of feet tall could be seen everywhere, and there were definitely many giants that were tens of thousands of feet tall. So many living beings suddenly appeared on the platform. They emitted their auras and fused them together, forming a faint cloud in the void. The surrounding void surged, and even the starlight was slightly distorted. With a thought, G2 waved his hand, and endless starlight condensed towards the platform through various strange lenses. It made the environment, which was originally so dark that many living beings could only see clearly with their super eyesight, as bright as day. Moreover, throughout the entire process, many living beings did not feel uncomfortable or dazzled. After that, G2 waited for another half a day. When no more beings stepped on the platform, it said, "Now that there are nearly 6 billion fellow Taoists here, it's not a lot, but it should be enough. In the future, the demon-killing domain will become the battlefield for the primordial world to deal with the boundless otherworldly demons. We came here to familiarize ourselves with the rules within the demon-killing domain so that we can gain an advantage in the future battles." As soon as G2 spoke, the platform, which had become rather complicated due to the arrival of so many creatures, quietened down. In the entire void, only the sound of the spikes reverberated around under the effect of their power. Many of the living beings already had a rough idea of what was going on from the message that the spikes had gathered earlier, but it was only a rough idea. After all, if they wanted to truly understand the situation in detail, they would need to listen more. G2 did not stop and continued. This demon-killing domain condenses the power of the entire virtual world. In it, living creatures like us can obtain the power of immortality. Even if we are killed, we can be reborn through the mysterious rules. We won't even lose any power. However, because we have to create the rules of rebirth, there are many differences between the fighting methods in the demon-killing domain and the outside world and the primordial world. I hope that everyone will not be careless in the past few years. Try your best to grasp the difference between this domain and other places so that you can unleash your strongest power when the great calamity arrives. Many living beings revealed looks of surprise when they heard that. Although this virtual world was virtual, the mental strength of the primordial world living beings had their own incarnations in this virtual world. The death of this incarnation was fundamentally different from the death of the primordial world. At most, they would only lose a bit of their mental strength. However, that was fundamentally different from being able to be reborn. In this virtual world, if living beings died, it would be equivalent to completely losing this identity. If they were to be reprojected into this world, they would return to their newborn state. They would need to cultivate hard in this virtual world for a long time before they could obtain their original mystical abilities and power. Therefore, the characteristic of being able to be reborn continuously without losing any power naturally surprised them. As for what G2 had said, most living beings did not care much about the differences in the fighting methods in the domain and the outside world. After all, this was what they had expected. G2 saw that most living beings understood his words. Without saying anything else, he directly contacted Hong Jun, who was in the domain, and asked him to prepare. Hong Jun, who was in the middle of the domain, knew that G2 had finished his preparations. He smiled slightly, and with a thought, the situation in the entire domain changed. In the blink of an eye, the rules changed endlessly. Countless races were naturally born from the void and hidden in various parts of the void. There were as many as 96 million of these races. The number of living beings in each race varied, but there were at least hundreds of millions of them, and some even reached trillions. With just such a change, countless living beings were born out of thin air. However, these living beings seemed to be real. Even their mystical abilities, Dharma spells, special abilities, and even their intelligence and spiritual senses were no different from reality. However, they were all products of the rules. It was just like the endless stars and void that had evolved in this virtual world. Seriously speaking, it was similar to natural phenomena. This was an extremely secondary function of the demon-killing domain. These 12,960,000 races had all sorts of strange appearances, and their divine abilities and supernatural abilities were inconceivable. It was almost impossible for any two races to have the same divine abilities and supernatural abilities, but it was also almost impossible for any race to have similar divine abilities and supernatural abilities in other races. These numerous races were the living beings that Hong Jun had comprehended through killing the 12. 96 million kinds of mental demons over the years. They were the living beings that evolved from the essence of the 12. 96 million kinds of mental demons. Although these living beings could not be completely similar to the otherworldly demons, and it was even impossible for any of them to be the same as the otherworldly demons. However, the 12. 96 million races contained all the essence of the otherworldly demons. As long as the demon-killing cultivators could fully understand the various mystical abilities and special abilities of the 12. 96 million races, they would not be unfamiliar with any kind of otherworldly demon in the future. They would not be at a loss of how to deal with the otherworldly demons' mystical abilities and special abilities. That was why Luo Fan had chosen Hong Jun to control the demon-killing domain and preside over the battle against the otherworldly demons. That was because among the countless living beings in the entire primordial world, only Hong Jun had completely seen through the 12. 96 million square meters of virtual world and completely understood the essence of the 12. 96 million kinds of mental demons. If it were anyone else, such as G2, they would definitely not be able to evolve the 12. 96 million races, even though they had the ability to control the demon-killing domain. After the race was formed, Hong Jun's mind moved again. The area where time flowed thousands of times faster than the outside world instantly expanded and filled the entire demon-killing domain, causing the flow of time in the entire demon-killing domain to reach a speed that was 3,650 times faster than the outside world. As the change appeared, endless light flickered in the void. The entire virtual world seemed to be shaking violently. The countless black holes scattered throughout the virtual world all trembled. Through the guidance of the virtual world's rules, the black hole's powers were channeled through some unimaginable channel to the galaxy where the demon-killing domain was located. It was not difficult for Hong Jun, who had completely understood the rules of the virtual world and could completely control the demon-killing domain, to change the flow of time. However, the problem was that, because of the rules of the virtual world, changing the flow of time required endless energy support. If it was only a small area, a certain number of black holes in the domain would be enough to support it. However, if this area of change was expanded to the entire galaxy, it would require the energy of all the black holes in the entire virtual world to help. It was precisely because of this that the endless black holes could send energy into the domain through that strange channel. An incomparably huge oval light shield appeared out of thin air and enveloped the galaxy that was tens of thousands of light years long, marking the galaxy clearly in the virtual world. On the platform outside the galaxy, many living beings exclaimed in unison. That was because in front of them, there was suddenly an incomparably huge golden wall of light that filled the heavens and the earth, completely blocking their line of sight. The top and bottom of the wall of light reached an unknown distance. No matter how powerful a living being's eyesight was, it was impossible for them to see the top and bottom of the wall of light. In fact, they might not even be able to see its arc, even though the tip of the ellipsoidal light shield was in front of them, which was the most obvious part of the arc. A light shield that enveloped the entire galaxy was really too big, so it was natural for such a phenomenon to occur. Behind the wall of light, the countless stars that could still be vaguely seen were instantly blocked by the golden light. The flow of time inside and outside was different, so naturally it was equivalent to being in a different time and space. How could the light pass through the barrier between the two? Naturally, the outside world could not see the scenery inside. If the previous galaxy was only faintly separated from the outside world, causing many living beings to feel that there was a different area in front of them, then the appearance of this light shield was extremely obvious. It was incomparably clear to the 3.6 billion living beings that once they stepped through this light shield, they would enter another world. The plan had already been set. At this moment, Jitu naturally knew what was going on and was not surprised by the appearance of the light shield. With a wave of his hand, he opened up hundreds of millions of huge doors on the platform. They densely covered the entire platform, and appeared among the many living beings. Chapter 444. Cultivation in the domain. All the living beings that could come here had naturally made all the necessary preparations. After hearing G2's words, they did not hesitate and immediately stepped through the door. They disappeared from the platform and entered the demon-killing domain. The flow of time on the platform was completely different from the flow of time in the demon-killing domain. Stepping through the door was equivalent to stepping through space-time. That feeling was an extremely novel experience for most living beings. In an instant, many living beings thought that they had gained a lot from this trip. Although none of the living beings really comprehended the space-time Tao, they were very optimistic about their future. Most of the living beings thought that they would definitely comprehend the space-time Tao one day. Even the most unconfident ones thought that they could make progress in the formation Tao. However, they did not know that the virtual world was completely different from the primordial world. The space-time Tao in this world was naturally different from the primordial world. The space-time Tao comprehended in the virtual world could only be used in the virtual world. Of course, this was not without benefits for many living beings. After all, the virtual world occupied an increasingly important place in the lives of the primordial world's living beings. Being able to use the space-time Tao in the virtual world to obtain more time was also extremely beneficial to them. After these living beings passed through the door, they were scattered throughout the entire demon-killing domain. Furthermore, the moment they passed through the door and entered the demon-killing domain, there was an endless flash of light. In an instant, the bodies of these living beings were equipped with armor and weapons that were most suitable for them. There were many living beings, but after they were scattered, they were unimaginably sparse. These living beings could not see any other living beings within a radius of 5 million kilometers. Fortunately, the spiritual sense network could still be used in this domain. This prevented many living beings from feeling isolated from the world. However, they did not have much time to enjoy this feeling. This was because the moment these living beings stepped into the demon-killing domain, the 96 million races created by Hong Jun had already begun to move. The door that G2 and Hong Jun had opened to connect the outside world to the demon-killing domain was directly near where the 12,960,000 races were hidden. The arrival of these living beings was instantly sensed by them. Due to their natural hostility, these races unceremoniously unleashed their various abilities, and spells on these living beings. In less than a breath's time, 90% of the living beings were unable to withstand this wave of attacks, and their defenses were directly broken by these attacks. Miserable screams, muffled groans, and gasps of surprise rang out along with all kinds of divine abilities, special abilities, and spells. Countless strange forms of death were displayed. G2 floated above the platform, his face showing an inexplicable smile. It seemed to be waiting for something. After a short while, countless rays of light suddenly flashed on the platform. Then, one creature after another suddenly appeared on the platform. Some of these creatures' eyes were blank, some were filled with fear, and some were filled with extreme anger. There were all kinds of strange expressions, displaying their different mental states. These were 90% of the creatures that had just been reborn and had been killed by the 12,960,000 species. After a while, dissatisfied complaints swarmed towards G2, almost drowning him. G2 had expected this. He smiled and isolated himself from the endless complaints. He said, "Fellow Taoists, the living beings that you encountered were created according to the various characteristics of the extraterrestrial demons. If you can't perfectly resist the sneak attacks of these demons, you can play a rather limited role in the great calamity. Fellow Taoists, if you have rested enough, summon the door and enter the demon-killing domain." After saying that, G2 smiled. Without waiting for the reactions of the living beings, he took a step forward and directly crossed space-time, entering the demon-killing domain. Moreover, he directly arrived at the center of the domain, where Hong Jun was. His explanation was naturally unable to satisfy the many living beings. However, G2 had already left and completely cut off the connection of the spiritual consciousness network. No matter how dissatisfied they were, there was nothing they could do. They could only do as G2 had said, and slowly rest on the platform to recover from the spiritual and power effects caused by their deaths. Although tens of thousands of years had passed in the virtual world, most of the billions of living beings had not tasted the taste of death. Such a sudden death this time had a huge impact on the souls of these living beings. There is no need to say much more, if not for the fact that these living beings were not ordinary living beings, and had at least cultivated before. Their souls and willpower were different from ordinary people. Perhaps this death would have caused them to lose all courage and courage to fight. At this moment, the difference in quality between the living beings could be seen. Some of the living beings only needed to rest for a while and adjust their mental states slightly before they completely recovered. Then, they directly summoned the door and entered the demon-killing domain. On the other hand, some of the living beings could only sit cross-legged and adjust their breathing for a long time before they barely managed to calm themselves down and muster the courage to summon the door and enter the demon-killing domain. When these living beings re-entered the demon-killing domain, they found that the demon-killing domain no longer had the calmness and loneliness it had the last time they had entered. Within the entire demon-killing domain, waves of energy impact, power fluctuations, powerful auras, and angry roars seemed to fill the entire river system of the demon-killing domain. Regardless of which part of the demon-killing domain they were in, all of them could sense the world-destroying battle that was taking place in other parts of the domain. The starry skies were cracking and the stars were being crushed everywhere. Although this river system was huge to the 12,960,000 different races and the demon-killing cultivators, it was just a slightly bigger battlefield. All the stars and starry skies were so fragile. As long as a certain amount of power was unleashed, even without reaching their limits, they would be able to break and shatter everything. Because the flow of time inside and outside the domain was different, the outside world had only spoken a few words, and the living beings had only needed to adjust their mental states for a while before the battle inside the domain had already reached a white-hot stage. 90% of the 3.6 billion demon-killing cultivators had been reborn under the first wave of attacks. However, only 10% of them had been reborn. That meant that the 360 million living beings were agile and experienced enough to withstand the first wave of attacks and fight against the demonic beings. This number was already extremely high. In addition, these living beings who could react were all relatively powerful existences among all the demon-killing cultivators. As a result, even if the power produced by such a large number of devil-slaying cultivators couldn't compare to the 12,960,000 demonic creatures, it was still powerful enough to fight against the 12,960,000 demonic creatures. Hong Jun and G2 floated in the middle of the demon-killing domain. Their eyes were deep and unfathomable, and there seemed to be countless lights flashing within them. The two of them were using their respective control over the demon-killing domain to observe the battle scene of the demon-killing cultivators within the entire domain. After watching for a long time, G2 sighed and said, "If they are still at this level after a few years, I'm afraid it will be difficult for the Tao Venerate's plan to succeed. This is just the beginning. Although the performance of these fellow Taoists is a little lacking, they will definitely improve. Anyway, we still have time, don't we?" Hong Jun smiled and said, "Looking at how they're fighting on their own, it's impossible to discover the nature of these devils' powers. I'm afraid it'll take a long time for them to grow to the point where they can resist the extraterrestrial devils." G2 was still not optimistic. "Fellow Taoist, you worry too much. After all, you and I are still here." Hong Jun smiled and said. As he spoke, he casually pointed. The 12,960,000 races underwent a slight change. Or rather, they underwent a slight evolution. Although it was only a slight evolution, just this little bit of evolution had almost doubled the growth of each of the race's powers. Among them, there were many beings who were so powerful that they could integrate the various races. This change caused these races to begin to unite. They started to change from the original situation of one race by one to a race splitting into several tribes. This caused the pressure on the demon-killing cultivators to change. Because of the unity of the races, the number of demonic creatures they faced naturally decreased. However, at the same time, the strength of the demonic creatures they faced had increased. This caused the difference in power between them and these demonic creatures to subtly change. This change gave them more chances to win, but at the same time, it also made them feel more danger. How is this change? Hong Jun smiled and said to Ji Tuesday. When Ji Tu saw this change, he could not help but exclaim in admiration, "Fellow Taoist, you have indeed received the teachings of the Tao Master. This technique is truly mysterious. Just this slight change is enough for many fellow Taoists to spend more effort to understand the nature of these demonic creatures' powers. It seems that the possibility of letting the demon-killing cultivators completely understand the nature of the extraterrestrial demons within the required time is much higher." When Hong Jun heard Jitu's words, he only smiled slightly and did not say a word. As for whether or not he could complete Luo Fan's request, Hong Jun did not have the slightest doubt. This was not just because he had absolute confidence in himself, but also because he had absolute confidence in his master, Luo Fan. Since his master had handed this matter to him, it meant that he believed that he could complete this task. Naturally, this task would definitely be completed. Chapter 445. The end of the Great Tribulation. Hongjuan's adjustments were immediate. Although the rebirth rate of the 3.6 billion demon-slaying cultivators had sped up several times due to the great improvement in the strength of the 960,000 demonic creatures, it also made many demon-slaying cultivators more serious about understanding the nature of these demon-slaying cultivators. Countless thoughts were constantly exchanging in the realm of spiritual awareness in the entire virtual world. All kinds of information about the weaknesses, abilities, and special powers of 12,960,000 kinds of monsters were constantly being exchanged and perfected in the Soul Sense Network. The Spiritual Consciousness Network had developed to this day and had become another world where one could do as they pleased, have all sorts of strange and dazzling things, and had everything. Compared to the internet in Luo Fan's previous life, it was thousands of times richer and more beautiful. Everything that existed on the internet, such as games, forums, movies, and so on, could be found in the Spiritual Consciousness Network. In fact, it might even be more beautiful and fantastical. It might not be the same, but its nature was the same. After all, there were hundreds of billions of living beings involved in the construction of the internet, and it had been developing for tens of thousands of years since it was first formed. Compared to the internet that Luo Fan had come into contact with in his previous life, the number of living beings involved and the number of years of development were many times greater. Under such circumstances, it was only natural that all these things that existed on the internet were developed. With the support of such a mysterious spiritual sense network, the information about the demonic creature's nature, weaknesses, divine abilities, special abilities, and incantations could naturally be easily gathered together and made known to all demon-slaying cultivators. This was related to the journey of these demon-slaying cultivators. Naturally, no living beings dared to neglect the information that other demon-slaying cultivators had exchanged their lives for. Therefore, although the amount of information about the 960,000 demonic creatures was huge, most of the demon-slaying cultivators still tried their best to remember it and use it in battle. As they fought, the information was constantly enriched and expanded, gradually forming a complete system. However, this did not mean that the demon-killing cultivators would have an easy time fighting against the 96 million races. As the demon-killing cultivators gained a deeper understanding of the 12,960,000 demonic creatures, these demonic creatures also continued to develop due to the mystical abilities, dermic arts, special abilities, and techniques displayed by the demon-killing cultivators. Their mystical abilities and special abilities were constantly being enriched and strengthened. Both sides continued to promote each other in such a way, developing more and more exquisite and profound combat techniques. The entire demon-killing domain had become a slaughterhouse. Their battle aura soared into the heavens and the earth. Almost every demon-killing cultivator's eyes were bloodshot, and their bodies emanated a killing aura of varying degrees. Time passed slowly. Within the demon-killing region, the demon-killing cultivator continued to grow as time passed. Their killing techniques turned from dry to smooth. The various mystical abilities, dermic arts, and special abilities changed from barely being able to be used to the point of perfection. They even created new mystical abilities, dermic arts, and special abilities that were specifically targeted at certain demonic creatures. Hongjun and G2 did not rest during this process. Instead, they constantly adjusted the demon-killing region. Through the macroscopic adjustments, they allowed the 6 billion demon-killing cultivators to receive more training and grow more. As for the living beings that originally lived within the demon-killing region, Hongjun also allowed them to participate in the battle. He also made use of the mysterious power of the demon-killing region to give them the ability to be reborn. This made them no different from the living beings from the primordial world. This was the only way that the number of demon-killing cultivators could be maintained at 6 billion. This was because as the battle continued, many living beings among the 6 billion living beings in the primordial world could not withstand the day after day and year after year of fighting. After a few years, they could no longer withstand the endless battle. They could not summon any courage to fight and left the demon-killing region. This many living beings represented a number of 6 to 700 million. Hongjun and G2 did not care about this change at all. If they could not withstand the battle for such a short period of time, how could they truly understand the essence of the 96 million mental demons? How could they truly understand their weaknesses? If they could not understand their weaknesses, no matter how many of them there were, they would not be able to become a decisive battle force when dealing with the otherworldly demons. It was a good thing to retreat earlier. In the blink of an eye, several years had passed in the primordial world. On this day, Luo Fan, who was sitting cross-legged in the Seeking Cave on Buzhou Mountain in the primordial world with his eyes closed, trying his best to understand the Tao of the Tai true number. He wanted to take half a step and truly achieve the Tai true number. Suddenly, on a whim, he stopped comprehending and opened his eyes. There was golden and silver light in his eyes, which were as warm as jade. In an instant, countless images flashed across his eyes. At the same time, his ears trembled slightly, as if he had heard something. It's finally here. Such a thought flashed across Luo Fan's mind. He stood up and took a step forward. His figure had already arrived in the endless starry sky. He was in an extremely mysterious and wonderful position. This place was in the endless starry sky, but it had an extremely close connection with the primordial world. As long as he lowered his head, he would be able to see the miniature of the primordial world below, but it was only a miniature. The relationship between the primordial world and the endless starry sky was unimaginably profound. Going up from the primordial world, passing through thousands of miles of astral wind, lightning, and fire, one would enter the endless starry sky. However, after entering, one would arrive in a void. One could not see the primordial world at all. One could only sense the existence of the primordial world through the aura and return to the primordial world. It was basically impossible to see the primordial world. The reason why Luo Fan could see the miniature of the primordial world was because, apart from his cultivation realm rising to the half-step Tai true number, he was in this position. This place was indeed in the endless starry sky. However, no living being could find this place, even if they walked through the entire endless starry sky. If there was really such a powerful living being, it was impossible to find Luo Fan. That was because this position was extremely mysterious and mysterious. It was similar to the connection between the primordial world and the endless starry sky. Of course, due to the limitations of Luo Fan's cultivation realm, he was more inclined to the endless starry sky. Therefore, he could only see the miniature of the primordial world at this moment. The miniature of the primordial world trembled slightly. There seemed to be an invisible and mysterious power producing a strange fluctuation, about to cause some mysterious changes. Seeing this change, Luo Fan knew that it was a sign that the great tribulation of the primordial world had finally arrived. Although most of the great tribulation of the world had been eliminated by Luo Fan, it was still a great tribulation after all. After all, it was a tribulation and an opportunity of the primordial world. When the time came, the primordial world would naturally produce all kinds of signs. With a thought projection directly appeared in the virtual world. Moreover, it directly appeared in the demon-killing domain, in front of Hong Jun and Ji Tuesday. He was the creator of this virtual world. Even in the endless starry sky that the Netherworld Network could not cover, he could still enter and exit this virtual world at will. This was not surprising. When Ji2 and Hong Jun saw Luo Fan's figure suddenly appear, they seemed to understand something and immediately bowed to him. Seeing the two of them, Luo Fan did not say much. He directly said, "The great tribulation of the world will come in 3 days. You two should prepare according to the plan." Hong Jun and Ji2's faces were filled with shock. Although they had expected that Luo Fan would appear and say something, they could not help but feel excited when they heard Luo Fan's words. After all, what they had been thinking and planning all these years was to deal with this great tribulation. "Yes, master." Hong Jun calmed down and said. At the same time, Ji2 also bowed and said yes. As for the plan, Luo Fan had already arranged it. Ji2 and Hong Jun had also planned it countless times. At this time, there was naturally no doubt that they would start the plan. Immediately, the two of them separated and began to act. Hong Jun and Ji2's tasks had been determined at the beginning. Naturally, they were different. Hong Jun's task was to guard the entire demon-killing domain and provide protection for the many demon-killing cultivators in the battle against the extraterrestrial demons. And Ji2's task was to protect the entire virtual world, to protect the foundation of the virtual world, to prevent the extraterrestrial demons from destroying the virtual world. Therefore, Hong Jun needed to stay in the demon-killing domain. On the other hand, Ji2 needed to leave the demon-killing domain and enter the virtual world at any time. After Luo Fan gave the order, his projection dissipated naturally. His consciousness returned to his body. He was still in a mysterious position in the endless starry sky, looking down at the changes in the primordial world. After Luo Fan left, with a thought from Hong Jun, the 12,960,000 demonic creatures in the entire demon-killing domain disappeared instantly. A thought appeared out of thin air in the spiritual consciousness of everyone who entered the virtual world. 3 days later, the Great Tribulation will arrive. Fellow Taoists, please conserve your energy and prepare for the demon-killing battle in 3 days. An indescribable silence spread throughout the entire demon-killing domain, then to the entire virtual world, and then to the entire primordial world. After the silence, there was a lot of noise. Some living beings were expressing their fighting spirit, some were expressing their uneasiness, and some were communicating with their companions. The great tribulation that had been prepared for many years had finally arrived. While most living beings felt nervous and uneasy, they also heaved a sigh of relief. A ray of spiritual light was produced from where Hong Jun was and spread in all directions. In a short while, it had spread throughout the entire demon-killing domain. After the spiritual light passed, it was as if time had turned back in the demon-killing domain. All the traces of destruction from the battle were completely eliminated. The stars shone again, the planets gathered again, the void repeated, and the stardust condensed again. It looked as if all the battles had never happened. Chapter 446. At that moment, there were only about 3 billion demon-killing cultivators left in the demon-killing domain. The rest of the demon-killing cultivators had left for the same reason as the demon-killing cultivators who had left earlier. Most of them were demon-killing cultivators who had entered the primordial world. Similarly, many of them were native living beings in the demon-killing domain. Many years had passed in the primordial world. Tens of thousands of years had passed in the demon-killing domain. After such a long period of non-stop fighting, these remaining demon-killing cultivators all became the cream of the crop. Almost every demon-killing cultivator had an extremely strong will to fight. Their cultivation potential was also extremely strong. After tens of thousands of years of development, the demon-killing cultivators in the entire demon-killing domain had formed one organization after another because they had a common enemy, a common goal, or some kind of common wish. The leaders of these organizations were also the most outstanding existences among the demon-killing cultivators. The 3 billion demon-killing cultivators had formed 3,000 huge organizations with at least 100,000 members based on their strength. They were named after Tao and were known as the 3,000 Great Tao. The strongest Great Tao was established by a martial artist named Heavenly Sword Supremacy, who had ascended from Luo Fan's minor Kiliakosm. The organization had more than 10 million members, including innate gods, tens of thousands. This Heavenly Sword Supremacy's cultivation level was not very high. He was only at the spirit-gathering realm. He had not even reached the fate-changing realm, much less the heaven martial arts realm. However, this Heavenly Sword Supremacy's willpower was extremely strong. Although he could not go to the trial world to break through the 12,960,000 square feet of virtual world due to the limitations of his cultivation realm, he still had the ability to use his own firm will to kill all inner demons. This was the demon-killing domain, not the primordial world. In this demon-killing domain, the difference in cultivation level was not as absolute as it was in the primordial world. As long as one's willpower was strong enough, as long as one's Tao heart realm was high enough, one could unleash unimaginable power. This Heavenly Sword Supremacy had used his indestructible willpower to transcend the demon-killing domain. With a 1-meter-long sword in his hand, he had subdued countless demon-killing cultivators. That was how he had established this heavenly sword path and used the power of so many demon-killing cultivators to intimidate the entire demon-killing domain and become the leader of the 3,000 Great Tao. Apart from the heavenly sword path, more than half of the 3,000 great paths were established by cultivators who had become ordinary in the past. Only a small portion of them were the innate gods who were already famous in the primordial world. Why have built tyrannical tiger Taoism, Tianlong Taoism, fist Taoism, heart sword Taoism, heavenly talisman Taoism. The establishment of these names was filled with the blood of countless demonic creatures. The establishment of each Taoism contained countless legends and innumerable inspiring miracles. There were countless scriptures that were similar to this heavenly sword venerable. If he wanted to explain them one by one, it would take more than 1 billion words. Under these 3,000 Great Tao, there were another 48,000 organizations with varying numbers of people. However, they were all rather famous in the entire demon-killing region. They were called the 48,000 unorthodox sects, and the strongest among them was an innate god. It was an organization called the 9 Heavens Gate with only 9 members. The founder of this organization was an innate god who had already cultivated to the peak of the itinerant immortal realm. His name was Taoist Wuxin. His Tao heart realm had already reached the peak of the 3rd realm. He was also an existence that was only one step away from breaking through the 3 realms of the Tao heart realm and achieving the 4th realm of the Tao heart realm. The power that he could unleash was hundreds of times stronger than that of an innate god in the itinerant immortal realm. It was hundreds of times stronger. The fact that the 9 Heavens Gate, which was formed by 9 people, was ranked first among the 48,000 unorthodox sects showed how powerful it was. Apart from the 9 Heavens Gate, there were also the Heaven and Earth sect, the Jade Void sect, the Jiaodai sect, the 3 Suns sect. The difficulty and legends of the establishment of the unorthodox sects were not inferior to the establishment of the 3,000 Great Tao. As Hong Jun spoke, the 3,000 Great Tao, the 48,000 unorthodox sects, and the remaining many itinerant cultivators, demon-killing cultivators who did not join these organizations, left the demon-killing region according to their previous plans. However, they naturally could not really leave. Instead, they appeared on the platform outside the demon-killing region according to their respective organizations. The 3,000 Great Tao, the 48,000 unorthodox sects, and the itinerant cultivators occupied 3 directions of this huge platform. Among them, the 3,000 Great Tao and the 48,000 unorthodox sects were divided into 3,000 groups and 48,000 groups, respectively. Obviously, they were gathered in one place according to their respective organizations. Although the Heavenly Sword Lord was only a postnatal living being and had not even reached the Tao, he had already established absolute prestige among the 3 billion demon-killing cultivators over the past tens of thousands of years. He immediately sent a message to the leaders of the other 3,000 Great Tao and the 48,000 unorthodox sects, as well as some rather famous itinerant cultivators, indicating that he wanted to meet with many itinerant cultivators. Because of his absolute prestige, all the cultivators who received his message agreed to his proposal. Immediately, a huge hall was built in the spiritual sense network. Then, rays of light flashed in the air, gradually filling up the tens of thousands of seats in the hall. The furnishings of this hall were rather simple, but it was unusually tall and occupied an extremely vast area. The entire hall was filled with an invisible sword intent that seemed to be able to pierce through the sky and destroy the void. All the demon-killing cultivators who came to this hall could sense that their spiritual senses were being nourished by this sword intent, and the original thoughts in their minds became more and more resolute. This hall was built based on the Heavenly Sword Lord's spiritual sense. Given his cultivation realm, the fact that he was able to build such a stable, vast, and mysterious hall was enough to show how resolute his willpower was. After all, although the buildings in the spiritual sense network were built based on spiritual sense, they were the result of the interaction between spiritual sense and willpower. If the spiritual sense was not strong enough and tenacious enough, the only way to make up for it was with willpower. With the Heavenly Sword Lord's spiritual sense, it was not difficult to build a hall, but it was impossible to build such a huge and mysterious hall that could accommodate so many living beings' spiritual senses. If his willpower was just a little bit weaker, this hall would never have appeared. The Heavenly Tao Palace is indeed extraordinary. Although it's not my first time here, I still feel quite amazed every time I come here. The sect master of the Nine Heavens sect, Taoist Wu Exin, could not help but exclaim as he looked at the hall. The Heavenly Tao Palace was the name of the hall built by the Heavenly Sword Lord. This name was not given by the Heavenly Sword Lord himself, but by the demon-killing cultivators who had come to this hall. The reason why it had such a name was because of the invisible sword intent that filled this hall. Although the invisible sword intent was weak, it was pure and unique, almost reaching the origin of the sword way. It seemed that its strength was pitifully weak, but it was pure and unique, almost reaching the source of the sword Tao. Was there any innate god who had the confidence to destroy it? Was there even a small number of innate gods who had reached the perfected immortal realm? They did not have such confidence. They could even comprehend some of the sword way through the invisible sword intent and create various sword techniques and sword techniques. In addition, this place was the gathering place of the 3,000 great ways, 48,000 unorthodox sects, and many individual cultivators. That was why it was called the Heavenly Tao Palace. Chapter 447. As the leader of the 3,000 great Taos, the Heavenly Sword Sovereign's might was naturally incomparably powerful. He sat upright on the seat of honor, and as he blinked his eyes, rays of sword light flashed. His entire body was like a sharp sword that could cut through space and annihilate the world, and his entire body emanated a powerful and indestructible sword intent. Under the pressure of his sword intent, although the other cultivators participating in the demon extermination conference were not intimidated by his powerful aura, they could sense that although his cultivation was inferior to theirs, he was an expert who could suppress them in terms of willpower. Naturally, They did not release their own strength to resist him. They only stabilized their bodies and sat down according to the agreed arrangement in the hall. After the 3,000 great Daos, the 48,000 unorthodox groups, and the many famous itinerant cultivators had all arrived. Of course, it only took a few dozen breaths of time. The Heavenly Sword Lord said, "Fellow Taoists, you are all outstanding existences among the demon-slaying cultivators, but your cultivation is far inferior to everyone here. Thank you for thinking so highly of me and being able to become the first Tao of the 3,000 great Taos. Today, I will shamelessly gather everyone here to discuss how to deal with the great calamity. I hope everyone will forgive me." The demon-killing cultivators in the hall were naturally willing to come because they recognized the Heavenly Sword Supremacy's status. At that moment, a few of them said that the Heavenly Sword Supremacy was being too humble and that he deserved his status. After these words that seemed to be nonsense, the situation was clear. The Heavenly Sword Sovereign could speak without worry. Seriously speaking, they were just executors of the upcoming great calamity. Of course, the real decisive power, the real reliance to survive the great calamity, was not them, but Luo Fan, Hong Jun, Ji Tu, and the others. However, this didn't mean that they would just swarm forward and kill without any order. However, many complicated and strict arrangements were still needed in order for the 3 billion demon-slaying cultivators to unleash their greatest power and better carry out their duty of exterminating the extraterrestrial demons. 3 billion demon-killing cultivators. This was a huge number. Only by gathering the 3,000 Grand Daos, 48,000 unorthodox sects, and renowned existences amongst the independent cultivators together and unifying everyone's thoughts would they be able to rely on their influence to accomplish this. This gathering could be said to be extremely necessary. The Sky Sword Sovereign knew that his status was due to everyone's respect, so he didn't give them any orders. Instead, he asked everyone to come up with a plan. If it were mortals, it would take months, years, or even decades for these 100,000 people to unify their thoughts and come up with a rule that everyone could accept. However, none of the people present were mortals. With their divine abilities and cultivation, they could exchange thousands of thoughts with each other in an instant. As a result, in just half a day, the 3,000 great Daos, the 48,000 unorthodox schools, and the many renowned wandering cultivators all knew what they had to do in the Great Tribulation, the area they were responsible for, and the types of sky demons they had to face. The 3 billion demon-killing cultivators had gone through tens of thousands of years of development. Each of them had their own strengths and weaknesses. Each demon-killing cultivator had developed a skill that could better deal with a particular type of demonic creature. Comparatively speaking, they would naturally be able to better deal with a certain type of extraterrestrial demon. As for these demon-killing cultivators of the same type, they usually participated in the same organization, the same great Tao or unorthodox school. Over the past half a day, the arrangements have been made for every demon-killing cultivator. Under what circumstances, where they should go and where they should go. If they encountered any sky fiends, they should go up against them. All these have been arranged. When all the arrangements were completed, the 3,000 great Daos, 48,000 unorthodox schools, and many wandering cultivators bade farewell to the Sky Sword Sovereign and left the spiritual consciousness network. They each went to make their own arrangements. As the leader of the Sky Sword Path, the first of the 3,000 great Daos, the Sky Sword Path had the most demon-killing cultivators under him. His cultivation level was also the lowest, so his task was the most important. However, he didn't dare to delay at all. He immediately gathered the many hall masters under him and distributed the tasks. The entire platform started to get busy because of this. However, this kind of busyness didn't seem the least bit chaotic. Instead, it seemed very orderly. With one look, one could tell that everyone was busy. None of their actions deviated from the plan. G2 had already left the demon-killing domain and the platform. Naturally, he didn't have much time to pay attention to the actions of these demon-killing cultivators. As Hong Jun was responsible for the entire demon-killing battle, he was naturally paying attention to these changes at all times. Naturally, he saw all the changes in the demon-killing cultivators. However, to him, the actions of these demon-killing cultivators couldn't be any better. It saved him a lot of trouble. Thus, although he saw it, he just smiled slightly and let it go. After that, his thoughts changed slightly. His mind merged with the entire demon-killing domain. He carefully sensed the changes in the demon-killing domain and tried to see if there were any mistakes. After all, this demon-killing domain had been in operation for tens of thousands of years. No matter how perfect and profound Luo Fan's original construction was, there would definitely be some differences from before. Now that they were about to face the invasion of endless heavenly demons, any mistakes in this demon-killing domain could become a fatal problem. Hong Jun had no choice but to be careful. After sensing it carefully and slightly adjusting the slight chaos caused by the tens of thousands of years of battle, Hong Jun waved his hand. The time in the entire demon-killing domain returned to the state where it was the same as the virtual world outside. The flow of time in the primordial world was 12 times faster. After that, he closed his eyes and entered a state of rest. He quietly waited for the arrival of endless heavenly demons. This was his mission. Luo Fan stood in the middle of the mysterious position in the endless starry sky. He lowered his head and looked at the miniature primordial world. His expression was solemn. The changes in the entire primordial world became more and more intense. All the chaos essence chi, connate essence chi, astral baneful chi, star essence chi, and all kinds of energy that could be named or not were undergoing extremely subtle changes. They seemed to be expecting something, but they also seemed to be afraid of something. It was like any living being that did not know the changes in its emotions. Time gradually passed in this change. After 3 days and 3 nights, it was the moment that Luo Fan, Hong Jun, and the others had mentioned that the great tribulation of heaven and earth was about to arrive. At this moment, a mysterious invisible power suddenly emerged from the 999,999 locations that were scattered in various parts of the primordial world. These powers were the same. They were all extremely subtle and mysterious. They contained the endless mysteries of time and space, as if they wanted to distort the time and space of the primordial world. If Luo Fan had not focused all his attention on the changes in the primordial world, he would not have been able to discover the appearance of these powers so quickly. However, at this moment, he instantly knew that the Great Tribulation had arrived. Among the 999,999 powers, there was an aura that Luo Fan was very familiar with. It was the aura of the great carefree demon lord. It's finally here. After hiding in the primordial world for so many years, it can't help but appear now. Luo Fan's expression changed. He raised his hand and grabbed at the void in the primordial world. In an instant, a force acted on the 999,999 powers that had appeared out of thin air and scattered in various parts of the primordial world. It was an aura that he was very familiar with. It continued to go deeper into the primordial world and touch the source of the aura. The 999,999 auras extended in all directions, but in the end, they pointed to a common destination. It was a place hidden in the depths of the primordial world. Even the void had been distorted, and even time had undergone a wonderful change. That place was 100,000 miles underground, in the depths of the 18 Hells. However, it did not seem to belong to the 18 Hells. It was just like the place where Luo Fan was at. It was in the depths of the endless starry sky, but it did not belong to the endless starry sky. It was a mysterious place that could not be described with words. So, it's hidden here. No wonder it can escape my perception. Luo Fan suddenly understood. With a thought, his dark doppelganger instantly walked out of the world in his sea of consciousness. It turned into a ray of mysterious light and rushed towards the miniature primordial world. It directly crashed into it, rushed into the primordial world, and directly threw itself into the depths of the 18 Hells 100,000 miles underground. Luo Fan's dark doppelganger was born from refining the void of the 18 Hells. It was not as powerful as Luo Fan's real body. In fact, it was only on par with the doppelganger magic treasure. However, the power it could exert in the 18 Hells was not any weaker than Luo Fan's real body, who was half a step away from the primordial unity true number. Moreover, because it was refined from the void of the 18 Hells, it could more easily cast many of the divine abilities and magic arts that Luo Fan's real body needed to prepare to cast. Therefore, it was most suitable to use the Dark Doppelganger to enter the 18 Hells to fight the vast freedom Demon Master. Of course, it was also because Luo Fan's main body could not be separated. He had to pay attention to the 9,999,999 powers that were scattered throughout the entire primordial world. The 9,999,999 strands of power were not something else, but the predecessors of the 9,999,999 space-time portals. As long as they were brewed for a certain period of time, this power could directly form space-time portals one after another, connecting to the outer realm and becoming the door for the endless heavenly demons to enter the primordial world. These portals are subtle and profound. They have integrated with the void of the entire primordial world and are also protected by the primordial world. It is impossible to break them. It seems that the vast freedom Demon Master has made amazing progress in these years. After releasing the Dark Doppelganger, Luo Fan looked calm, but such thoughts flashed through his mind. Chapter 448. Although Luo Fan was already a half-step primordial immortal with remarkable abilities and infinite power, it was impossible for him to go against the general trend of the Untainted Land. Since the Untainted Land was destined to have these portals, it was destined to experience these great tribulations. All he could do was try his best to weaken the power of the great tribulations and try his best to deal with them. Therefore, knowing that these doors were protected by the primordial world, he did not think about how to break them. He only watched quietly as the doors gradually took shape. The 999,999 powers were distributed throughout the entire primordial world. These positions were obscure, subtle, and mysterious. Not only were they on the ground, but there were also many of them on the boundless sea. Luo Fan had divided the entire primordial world into more than 100,000 regions and handed the responsibility of guarding these regions to the 100,000 innate gods. In the past few years, these innate gods, with the help of the Netherworld Network, they had managed to completely control the huge area of the primordial world within their respective areas. It was to the extent that it could sense all abnormal changes that occurred in these areas. However, there were almost no innate gods among the 999,999 powers. They could sense it. These powers were too obscure. Even in Luo Fan's opinion, the mysteries of the Tao of space-time were worth referring to, let alone the innate gods who were far inferior to Luo Fan. To be precise, therefore, while these powers were evolving towards the space-time portal, the innate gods who were scattered and suppressed the primordial world did not discover these abnormalities. However, not many of them discovered these abnormalities. Even the innate gods who occasionally discovered some, they only thought that it was another phenomenon naturally formed in the primordial world. The 100,000 innate gods? They did not join the many demon-killing cultivators in the virtual world. It was not that they were unwilling to contribute to the primordial world through the Great Tribulation. Instead, they all knew that Luo Fan had given them the responsibility of guarding the primordial world, which meant that this responsibility was extremely important. It was countless times more important than joining the demon-killing cultivators to fight. With a thought, Luo Fan connected to the Netherworld Network. Through the most basic information transmission function at the beginning, he transmitted a thought to the 100,000 innate gods guarding the primordial world. Something special. The moment the thought arrived, 100,000 powerful auras rose from all over the primordial world. Combined with the mysterious effects of the Yellow Springs network, it covered the entire world. The 9,999,999 strands of power, which contained the boundless mysteries of the Tao of time and space, were as conspicuous as fireflies in the darkness. But it was directly highlighted. These powers are forming a door that connects to the outer realm. Due to the protection of the primordial world, it is not easy to destroy it now. Only after the doors were formed and a certain number of extraterrestrial demons had passed through would these doors be destroyed. Fellow Taoists, please find the right time to destroy it and leave the extraterrestrial demon to me. Luo Fan then sent his thoughts to the 100,000 innate gods through the Yellow Springs web. What about the 100,000 innate gods? He trusted Luo Fan very much, so he nodded and agreed to Luo Fan's arrangement. Seeing so many innate gods, after agreeing to his arrangement, Luo Fan focused his attention on the 9,999,999 strands of power and observed the entire process of their evolution. Waves of mysterious and unbelievable auras were emitted from these powers. These auras were extremely strange. It seemed that they could be found in the primordial world, but they could not be found in any of them that were exactly the same. The number of auras was the same as the number of powers. They were both 9,999,999. Time and space gradually distorted. The entire primordial world shook more and more violently. Under the impact of the auras, it was like a cloth bag with countless holes, as if everything could pass through it. With a thought, Luo Fan's mind fused with the Yellow Springs network in the entire primordial world. With the incredible power of the Yellow Springs network, his mind locked onto the 9,999,999 strands of power that were evolving towards the door. The speed at which the power evolved became faster and faster. When it first appeared, it was only faintly discernible. Although it contained the infinite mysteries of the Tao of space-time, it was obscure and difficult to detect. Gradually, it turned into a dazzling, mysterious light that emerged from the void. Like a tangible shadow, it gradually condensed into a concrete form in the void. There were huge stone doors of different sizes, but they were all at least tens of thousands of feet high. There were countless strange patterns on the stone door, as if there were countless strange creatures, and also as if there were countless strange worlds. As the huge stone doors took shape, a murderous aura gradually spread out from them. The aura intertwined with each other and slowly filled the entire untainted land, enveloping the entire untainted land in this murderous aura. It was as if a Shuraba was about to hold a life and death battle. At this moment, inside Buzhou Mountain, an aura as heavy as hundreds of millions of mountains slowly emerged. Then, a huge figure that was tens of thousands of feet tall slowly walked out of Buzhou Mountain. He raised his head and looked at the 12 huge stone doors that were also tens of thousands of feet tall, arranged according to some mysterious formation, in the void that was tens of thousands of miles above the ground. This person was naturally the god of Buzhou Mountain, who was cultivating in seclusion. Looking at the stone doors, the god of Buzhou Mountain waved his hand casually. Suddenly, hundreds of millions of mysterious lights appeared around him. These mysterious lights were extremely profound. After surging out of his body, they kept outlining in the void. Finally, they quickly gathered above his head, forming a huge shadow of the world that was tens of thousands of miles wide. In the shadow of the world, there were countless powerful creatures eager to try, brewing their strongest attacks. Most of these creatures were star beasts with halos behind their heads, but there were also many huge creatures that looked like stone statues. It was what the god of Buzhou Mountain had obtained in the past few years of cultivation. At the same time, there were also powerful innate gods in the south, the Fuso tree in the east, and the Earth Pole. They walked out. They looked at the huge stone doors that appeared on the ground, underground, and in the void. Were those the powerful innate gods that Luo Fan had handed 1296 star tablets to, including the ape couple, Yu Su, Fun Tian, and perfected sandalwood? They had the responsibility of guarding the 4 poles of the primordial world. As for the other innate gods, they could follow Luo Fan's instructions and only pay attention to the timing to destroy the space-time doors. However, they could not hand everything over to Luo Fan. After all, the four poles of the primordial world were very important. Even if there was a slight possibility of danger, they had to treat it with utmost seriousness. Chapter 449. While the 999,999 streams of energy were evolving towards the space-time portal, Luo Fan's darkness incarnation had already entered the 18 Hells and was heading toward a mysterious location in the depths of the 18 Hells. This darkness incarnation was refined by Luo Fan by cutting off a part of the void of the 18 Hells. It was born with an unimaginable compatibility with the 18 Hells. To the other innate gods? To him, it might be a natural moat, but to him, it was just a path. To him, that mysterious location was just a rather ingenious location, but it could not stop him from reaching it. The flow of time in the 18 levels of hell was extremely strange. It felt like thousands of years had passed, but it also felt like only an instant had passed. The darkness incarnation's figure shook, and he passed through an invisible barrier, entering that mysterious location. It's a small world. It was a small world with a circumference of only 10,000 miles, but it seemed exceptionally complete and rich, as if everything in the universe had been compressed into this small world. When the darkness incarnation stepped into this small world, it felt as though it had completely left the 18 levels of hell. The feeling of being completely in sync with his body had completely disappeared. What replaced? It was an extremely strange suppression. It was as if the entire void, the entire world, and everything that could or could not be seen with the naked eye was rejecting him. With a thought from the darkness incarnation, everything in this small world instantly appeared in his mind. Turning his gaze, he had already locked onto a strange mountain peak that was close to the edge of the small world in the distance. This mountain looked indomitable, almost like the Bujo mountain in the untainted world, supporting the sky and the earth of the entire small world. But if one took a closer look, they would find that this mountain was only hundreds of feet high. Even in Luo Fan's spirit space, it was a low mountain, let alone in the untainted world. So it's here. This thought flashed through the dark incarnation's mind. This darkness incarnation was Luo Fan's incarnation, so it was essentially Luo Fan. However, it was an incarnation after all, and because of the material it was made of, its personality would be somewhat affected. It was very different from Luo Fan's main body. He took a step forward and directly crossed the small world and arrived at the top of the mountain. Haha, so it's an esteemed guest who has come from afar. I apologize for not going out to greet you. A leisurely voice rang out, entering the ears of the dark incarnation. Hearing those words, the darkness clone's expression did not change. His eyes were still pitch black like the deep universe, and there was still an incomparably calm aura around him. He stood still. There was a small platform at the top of the mountain. The platform was not big, only 3 feet in circumference. There was a lotus platform on top of it, sparkling and translucent. There was endless mist swirling about it, constantly changing, as if it was evolving into millions and millions of creatures, as if it was displaying the millions and millions of forms of all things in the world. A man sat on top of the lotus throne. This man was extremely handsome, and his figure was unimaginably perfect. As he sat there, he displayed the true meaning of perfection in every aspect. His appearance was almost exactly the same as Luo Fan's. They had the same face and the same body, but they displayed a completely different style. Mahesvara, Demon Master. The darkness clone looked at the man, his expression calm to the point of indifference, and said indifferently, "That's me." The man smiled faintly. The entire void seemed to be filled with an invisible aura of joy along with his smile. It was as if the entire world, the entire universe, had become happy because of his smile. There were even faintly discernible heavenly flowers forming in the void and falling from the sky, illuminating the small world as if it was a legendary fairyland. It seems that this must be the Mahesvara magic that the Demon Master has cultivated. The darkness clone's expression was calm. When the Mahesvara Demon Master had first entered the untainted world, he had only been an itinerant immortal. However, he was the Demon Master of the Mahesvara Heaven, the ruler of the entire world. Due to the special nature of the Mahesvara heaven, his aptitude had reached an unimaginable level. Under such circumstances, in the tens of thousands of years since he entered the untainted world, he had used his great wisdom to fuse all of his theurgy, magic arts, and supernatural abilities with the great path laws of the untainted world, integrating them into the supreme Mahesvara magic. The power of this magic was boundless, and it could directly enter the heart of any living being. When cultivated to the peak, one could directly become an immortal and indestructible supreme demon, hiding in the heart of all living beings. As long as there was any living being in the world, he could exist forever, and he could be reborn with a bit of demonic nature in any living being's heart. However, just like how Luo Fan had only cultivated half a step into the Tai true number since he created the Tao fruit, the Mahesvara demon had only created the Mahesvara magic, but he had only cultivated to the third realm. He was still 6 major realms away from the real immortal realm. In other words, he was only comparable to the peak of the golden immortal realm. When the darkness clone had first formed, he was only at the level of an itinerant immortal. However, after years of cultivation in Luo Fan's sea of consciousness, and after the tempering of the 1,296 characters, he had already reached the peak of the golden immortal realm. Moreover, because he was refined from the void of the 18 levels of hell, he was born with a very close connection with them. Just by seeing the Mahesvara demon master, he instantly received feedback from the 18 levels of hell and instantly knew the Mahesvara demon master's actual situation. The Mahesvara demon master's Mahesvara magic was precisely because of this feedback. With the cultivation of the golden immortal realm, he could easily resist the Mahesvara demon master without the support of Luo Fan's will. Therefore, although the Mahesvara demon master's Mahesvara magic was incredibly profound, it was only at the third realm, and it could not shake the darkness clone's will. As expected, I still can't hide it from you. The Mahesvara demon master smiled. As he smiled, the lotus platform he was sitting on rose from the ground, instantly leaving the mountain and floating upward. In the blink of an eye, he was already floating in the void. Who knew how far away from the ground? Moreover, his body also grew larger. When he was still in the void, his body had already grown to a height of more than 1,000,000 feet. He stood tall, like a legendary Buddha. Billions of rays of light were emitted from the lotus platform he was sitting on, instantly enveloping the entire small world. Everything in the small world began to change mysteriously under the light. Chapter 450. Everything in the small world melted into the light and became a part of it. As the light fluctuated, subtle and unpredictable fluctuations were produced. The entire small world had become the great Freedom Demon Lord's personal domain in the blink of an eye. The Dark Incarnation was in this mysterious personal domain, but he was like a boulder in the depths of the boundless ocean. He stood firmly in the void, not moving at all. He looked at the huge changes that had taken place in the entire world with an extremely calm expression. The great Freedom Demon Lord was not pleased with the changes. He floated in the void and looked down at the Dark Incarnation, who had become as small as an ant. He said, "I know that your cultivation is unfathomable, but don't even think about finding a way to stop the space-time portal from opening up in my hands. These portals have fused with the world and are supported by the power of the world. They're no longer something that I can move." Although the great Freedom Demon Lord said that, he did not look like he was begging for mercy at all. He seemed extremely natural and calm. "I came here to kill you, not for anything else." The Dark Incarnation's expression was also extremely calm as he said calmly, "I see." The great Freedom Demon Lord smiled. After he finished smiling, he raised his right hand and suddenly pressed down on the Dark Incarnation. The palm was like the world had turned upside down. It was filled with an aura of destruction and the collapse of all things. Under the palm, a decadent aura gradually formed in the Dark Incarnation's mind. It spread at an extremely fast speed, wanting to completely change the Dark Incarnation's mind. The Great Freedom Demon Lord was originally the Demon Lord of the Great Freedom Transformation. He was born with the ability to make use of the weaknesses of the living being's mind to cultivate with a bit of demonic nature. After he integrated his own divine arts, spells, and special abilities into the great freedom magic, the power was strengthened by thousands of times. It was completely integrated into his every move. The decadent aura that appeared out of nowhere in the Dark Incarnation's mind was caused by the great freedom magic. The Dark Incarnation did not care about the decadent aura at all. He raised his head to look at the giant hand, which seemed to be overturning the heavens and earth. His expression was extremely calm, and there was not a trace of doubt in his eyes. This palm seemed to be a simple pressure, but in fact it combined all the power of the self-domain formed by the entire small world into one place. The pressure contained endless martial arts mysteries. Every tremor, every subtle movement, and every bit of distance that was pushed forward had an endless follow-up move. Under this palm, apart from the decadent aura that could cause the minds of living beings to change, it also had the ability to lock down space, making it impossible for the opponent to dodge. This simple palm strike had already attained the peak of returning to simplicity, and its might had reached the peak of the golden immortal realm. As the palm approached, the darkness incarnation took a step forward. He easily broke through the void locked by the palm and flashed in the void in a very strange way. In the blink of an eye, he had evaded the palm and came to the same height as Great Freedom Demon Lord's eyes. He looked at Great Freedom Demon Lord nonchalantly. Great Freedom Demon Lord's great freedom magic was naturally not limited to this palm strike. Great Freedom Demon Lord retracted his hand and raised it when he saw that the Dark Incarnation had escaped the palm strike so easily. Golden lotuses appeared out of nowhere in the void, instantly dyeing the area within a radius of 10,000 miles into a world of golden lotuses. On his palm, a mysterious and unbelievable world quickly took shape. This world was extremely mysterious, and everything in it was unpredictable. There were billions of forms being created almost at every moment. The entire world reflected the golden lotuses around the giant hand, and they were of the same origin. It looked as if the endless golden lotuses were the derivation of that world. Or rather, that world was the evolution of the endless golden lotuses. It was difficult to put into words how mysterious it was. The Dark Incarnation's expression did not change as he looked at this scene, and he casually pressed down. A giant black hand naturally formed in the void, and it pressed down on Great Freedom Demon Lord's hand that was coming toward him. The giant black hand was not formed from black mist, nor was it a physical substance. However, it looked extremely real, as if it had been formed from the void. It looked like a form of the void that had changed. Although it looked like a physical substance, it seemed impossible to grasp its true form, making it impossible for others to come into contact with it at all. At that moment, the world in the Great Freedom Demon Lord's hand shook, and billions of lives rushed out from it. These lives came in all shapes and sizes, but every single one of them had at least attained the path. Every single one of their forms had evolved a certain battle form to the extreme. They even exuded an indescribable sacred aura. It was as if these lives were favored by the heavens and earth, and they contained boundless divine might of the world. One's own domain was an extension of one's mind, and it was also the materialization of one's Tao heart. The great freedom magic that the Great Freedom Demon Lord cultivated was a combination of his innate divine abilities and special abilities, as well as the endless techniques he had comprehended in the past. In fact, it even included all the divine abilities, techniques, and special abilities that could appear in his great freedom transformation. It could be said that such a cultivation technique had the most variations and the most abundant divine abilities and techniques. If it was used against other living beings who were not as strong as the Great Freedom Demon Lord, he would be able to use billions of mysterious and incredible techniques to deal with, subdue, and fight them. However, the Great Freedom Demon Lord was currently facing Luo Fan's dark clone, a being whose true form had reached half-step primordial, and whose clone had also reached the pinnacle of the gold immortal realm. To this dark incarnation, all the changes on the surface, all the changes in divine abilities, all the changes in techniques were useless. In the end, it was all about cultivation and power. Because of this, Great Freedom Demon Lord couldn't use the essence of transformation, which was the Great Freedom Demon Lord's forte. He could only use the Great Freedom Demon Lord's own domain to condense all the divine abilities and magic arts in the Great Freedom Demon Lord's domain to fight against the Dark Incarnation. The number of lives that gushed out from the palm was incredibly high. Tens of millions, hundreds of millions, 1 billion, 10 billion, trillions. The Dark Clone remained unfazed in the face of such changes. Without any hesitation or pause, the palm pressed down on the void below, pressing down on the endless number of mysterious living beings. It was also a variation that broke away from all divine abilities and techniques, and directly used his most fundamental power and cultivation to attack. From this, one could see the difference between the Dark Clone and the Great Freedom Demon Lord. The Dark Clone's cultivation was the purest and most refined. He gathered all his power in one place and cut away all distracting thoughts, leaving only the purest will to fight in his heart. On the other hand, the Great Freedom Demon Lord's cultivation was extremely complex and extensive. He had to use all the variations in his power to evolve all the forces that could possibly exist in the world and destroy his opponent with an earth-shattering momentum. The difference could even be seen from the difference in their figures. Chapter 451. Rising Tribulation 4. The Dark Incarnation's giant black hand quickly clashed with the Great Unrestrained Demon Lord's giant hand. It was as if two extremely ordinary palms had clashed, and not a single sound was heard throughout the entire process. The two giant hands stuck together as if they had been created since time immemorial. However, as the two hands came into contact, the endless life forms that had rushed out of the Great Unrestrained Demon Lord's palm seemed to have been brushed by an invisible and powerful force. They disintegrated in an instant, turning from their original state of being to nothingness. It was as if they had never appeared in the first place. The Great Unrestrained spell was erased by the Dark Incarnation's power before it could even take effect. The Great Unrestrained spell's advantage lay in its breadth and transformations, but the Dark Incarnation had used various methods to force it into a battle of cultivation and power. It was only natural that it was at a great disadvantage. The Great Unrestrained Demon Lord's palm instantly disintegrated, turning from its original state of being able to blot out the sky into countless tiny fragments. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere, constantly twisting and changing in the void, as if it were evolving into countless strange transformations and innumerable inconceivable life forms. However, these life forms and transformations completely disintegrated shortly after they appeared, turning into nothingness in the blink of an eye. They were still affected by the Dark Incarnation's power, unable to unleash the divine abilities they had after being tempered by the Great Unrestrained spell. After being tempered by the Great Unrestrained spell, the flesh and blood had become inconceivable existences. Dispersing and fusing into countless life forms was nothing out of the ordinary. From a certain point of view, it was somewhat similar to the pattern Great Tao's blood rebirth. If the Great Unrestrained Demon Lord ignored it, even if the flesh and blood had been torn into countless pieces, they could quickly reassemble in another location and form the same giant hand. The Great Unrestrained Heavenly Demon Lord's expression did not change much upon seeing this, and he continued to smile, as if what was happening was not even worth mentioning to him. He opened his mouth slightly, and a burst of golden light that was imbued with a boundless fragrance and heavenly flowers rushed out of his mouth. In the void, it instantly turned into millions of gods and Buddhas, forming a world of gods and Buddhas, which directly enveloped the Dark Incarnation in front of him. This world of gods and Buddhas was incredibly real, and there was nothing fake about it at all. The gods and Buddhas were at least at the itinerant immortal realm, and the higher ones had even reached the golden immortal realm. They were not any weaker than the Great Unrestrained Demon Lord himself. The Dark Incarnation looked at the world of gods and Buddhas, and his eyes finally moved for the first time. The Dark Incarnation looked at this world of gods and Buddhas, and his eyes finally moved for the first time. Even though the Dark Incarnation didn't possess the true pupils of sun and moon and the true ears of time and space, it possessed the cultivation at the peak of the golden immortal realm. So its discerning ability was extremely extraordinary. So it immediately discerned the truth of the world of gods and Buddhas before it. None of the living beings in the world of gods and Buddhas were created out of thin air, nor were they the power of the great freedom heavenly devil lord himself. Instead, the great freedom demon lord used his great freedom magic to capture and condense a projection of many innate gods in the untainted world. Rather than saying that it was a recreated world of gods and Buddhas, it would be more accurate to say that it was a miniature version of the great boundless heavenly demon lord's untainted land. Fighting with these gods and Buddhas was like fighting with millions of creatures in the world of gods and Buddhas. Luo Fan could even faintly see the veins behind the world of gods and Buddhas. He knew that the death of these gods and Buddhas would definitely use some kind of extremely mysterious channel to affect the bodies of these gods and Buddhas. Although it was impossible for them to die directly, it would definitely cause damage to their bodies. What are you going to do? In a battle of this level, my great unrestrained magic is quite limited, but this move is more powerful than I expected. It's really a surprise. The great unrestrained demon lord smiled faintly. His voice was gentle and extremely pleasant, like a stream of clear spring water flowing directly into the heart of the listener. At this time, the great unrestrained demon lord was still huge. He made a strange gesture with one hand and placed it in front of his chest, while the other hand that had just grown out covered the world of gods and Buddhas. Flowers fell from the sky, golden lotuses surged everywhere, and the sound of the great Tao came, reflecting the extreme darkness of the 18 levels of hell outside, making it even more sacred and majestic. The eyes of the Dark Incarnation flickered, and then he regained his composure. After looking around, he found many familiar figures among the countless gods and Buddhas. Although the nature of these figures' power had changed greatly, and their cultivation methods were completely different, and even their appearances were not similar to their real bodies, the level of their power was not much different from their real bodies. They were all extremely powerful existences. It was not difficult to destroy these gods and Buddhas, even if the one here was only a dark incarnation of Luo Fan. But the troublesome thing was the connection between these gods and the innate gods of the unrestrained world. However, the consequences of killing these innate gods were hard to predict. It's really mysterious. Demon Lord, you could be called a genius to be able to create such a great, unrestrained magic. The Dark Incarnation observed for a while, and then praised. You flatter me. The great, unrestrained demon Lord smiled slightly. The Dark Incarnation shook his head and said no more. With a thought, the giant hand that he had just sent out suddenly collapsed, and when the gods and Buddhas in the world of gods and Buddhas were about to come into contact with the Dark Incarnation, the hand reassembled in the Dark Incarnation's body. In an instant, a mysterious change occurred. There seemed to be something inside the Dark Incarnation's body that suddenly expanded at an unimaginable speed. In the blink of an eye, it rushed out of his body and built a larger and more obvious dark realm around his body. Or what could be said to be a dark world. This dark world was very similar to the 18 hells of the outside world. Although the intensity was quite different, the essence was the same. It was as if a part of the 18 hells of the outside world had been transferred to his body by the Dark Incarnation. In the process of this dark world expanding, it overlapped with the surrounding world of gods and Buddhas and instantly produced a violent and mysterious change. As if the void had been annihilated in an instant, the void of the world of gods and Buddhas disappeared inch by inch and was swallowed by the endless dark world. And the gods and Buddhas who were rushing over like the Dark Incarnation and bursting with infinite magical powers were instantly absorbed into the dark world. Their originally golden bodies were instantly dyed black. After that, the connection between them and the living beings in their original bodies was instantly cut off. The gods and Buddhas also collapsed and were directly annihilated by the dark world. The great freedom demon lord's body trembled, and his eyes revealed a look of disbelief. He opened his mouth and roared. Even more intense and dazzling golden light rushed out of his mouth and quickly rushed towards the world of gods and Buddhas in front of him. It constantly strengthened the power of the world of gods and Buddhas, making the void of the world of gods and Buddhas more stable. At the same time, the light around the bodies of the gods and Buddhas became more dazzling, and their defense became more powerful. However, this change couldn't stop the erosion and expansion of the dark world. In a breath's time, the entire world of gods and Buddhas was completely replaced by the dark world. The trillions of gods and Buddhas were completely cut off from their original bodies, and then annihilated by the dark world. But the dark world still didn't stop expanding. Instead, it continued to expand outwards, constantly destroying and devouring the unpredictable self-realm of the great freedom demon lord, which contained infinite magical powers. From a distance, it looked like a black that had appeared in the great freedom demon lord's self-realm and was rapidly expanding and growing, dyeing the self-realm of the great freedom demon lord black at an unimaginable speed. The great freedom demon lord tried all kinds of methods to stop the expansion of the dark world. He used all kinds of great freedom magic to intercept it, used all kinds of special abilities to suppress it, and even cut off a part of his self-realm. But no matter what method he used, the expansion of the dark world was like the law of water flowing downwards, unstoppable. It directly crushed and devoured all the methods he used, making all his efforts go up in smoke, and devoured the self-realm of the great freedom demon lord without any pause. In a few breaths' time, it had completely replaced the self-realm of the great freedom demon lord, enveloping the dark incarnation and the great freedom demon lord. But at this time, the great freedom demon lord's body quickly shrank. Almost at the instant his body was devoured by the dark world, it shrank to its normal size, no different from the height and size of the dark incarnation. The great freedom demon lord sat on the lotus platform, while the dark incarnation stood opposite him, floating in the void. The two of them looked at each other, their expressions extremely calm, and there were no fluctuations in their eyes. The great freedom demon lord had borrowed Luo Fan's form to transform into the primordial world, while the dark incarnation was an incarnation refined by Luo Fan. Both of them looked very similar to Luo Fan's main body. As they looked at each other, an extremely profound aura unknowingly emanated from them. It was as if they were two sides of the same coin. This is a domain that my main body created by grabbing the void of the 18 hells. It's fused with my mind and possesses the mysterious power of the 18 hells. It's extremely easy for me to kill you, the dark incarnation said calmly as he looked at the great freedom demon lord, who looked extremely familiar. Kill me? Ha! I've already cultivated the great freedom demon art to the 3rd layer. Although I can't make use of a trace of demonic nature in every living creature in the world to be reborn, I can still achieve immortality as long as the great freedom demon art exists. Even if you kill me here, it'll only allow me to escape from the 18 layers of hell. What loss is there for me? The great freedom demon lord said with a smile. Since I know about your great freedom demon art, why would I leave behind such a huge flaw? The dark incarnation was still calm. With a thought, an inexplicable fluctuation suddenly swept through the dark world. Chapter 452. Inside the barrier, the great freedom demon lord felt that the speed of his mind had slowed down countless times, and his physical strength had been greatly weakened. It felt as if he had instantly turned from a lofty, immortal god to an ant lying on the ground, unable to move. In an instant, the great freedom demon lord realized the dark incarnation's goal. So he wants to seal me. This is indeed the best way. After having this thought, the great freedom heavenly demon lord's mind, will, and physical senses all froze. The Dark Incarnation looked at the great Freedom Demon Lord, who was sealed in a block of black, mysterious ice, with a calm expression on his face. The dark world that emanated from his body was originally refined from a part of the void in the 18 layers of hell, and it innately possessed the characteristics of time and space in the 18 layers of hell. The speed at which time flowed was fluctuating so much that it had reached an unimaginable level. Coupled with the fact that it had been nourished and refined by the Dark Incarnation for so many years, the Dark Incarnation had a certain degree of control over the flow of time in the dark world. The black, mysterious ice in front of him was a product of the evolution of time and space. It was a phenomenon that would only appear when the flow of time inside it had slowed to a point where it was close to stagnation. The mysterious ice here seemed to be material, but in fact, it was just an appearance of the stagnation of time and space. Looking at the mysterious ice in front of him, the Dark Incarnation sat down cross-legged in the void and closed his eyes slightly. He became like a wooden statue, and there was no longer any aura of life coming from him. The great Freedom Demon art was strange and unpredictable. If Luo Fan's main body was here, he could, of course, directly destroy the source of the great Freedom Demon Lord and kill him. However, the one here was just the Dark Incarnation, who was also a golden immortal like the great Freedom Demon Lord. Therefore, he did not have a good way to deal with the great Freedom Demon art. He could only seal him here and wait for the great calamity to pass and all the extraterrestrial demons to die or their main bodies to arrive. In any case, Luo Fan had only sent the Dark Incarnation here to deal with the great Freedom Demon Lord. As long as he could seal him here, it did not matter even if the Dark Incarnation could not escape. The depths of the 18 layers of hell fell into a state of extreme silence in the blink of an eye. It was as if nothing had ever happened. In the primordial world, in the search cave of Buzhou Mountain, the hearts of Luo, Fu, and the others who were cultivating shook as they sensed the world-shaking changes in the outside world. The few of them looked at each other and turned in a long arcs that rushed out of the search cave. They hovered in the void and looked down at the strange changes that erupted in the primordial world. This must be the great tribulation of heaven and earth that Father spoke of. Luo Fu looked at the 12 huge gates and the god of Buzhou Mountain standing opposite them, sighing. These 12 portals were arranged in a very strange way in the void, and an unusual aura of space and time constantly seeped out of them. They intertwined in a very strange way, forming some kind of resonance. It was obvious that some kind of huge change was brewing. That should be the case. However, what should we do? Master didn't give us any instructions before. Guang Pu frowned and said with some annoyance, "Since Master didn't give us any instructions, I don't think there's anything special that we have to do. I think we should enter the virtual world like the other living beings of the primordial world." Lei Jiuxiao's eyes shone with an extremely deep light as he directly saw through the essence of the truth. Gu Ling, Patriarch Sky Dragon, and Luo Chunyang, who was hugging Luo Gua, were also at the side. Luo Chunyang naturally had nothing to say. His elders were all here, so anything he said would be overstepping his bounds. Of course, what they said was what they said. However, Gu Ling and Patriarch Sky Dragon were different. At this moment, the man and dragon looked at the portals in front of them, and their expressions changed slightly. They seemed to be reminiscing, but also seemed to be afraid. They seemed very complicated. After all, they were living beings from the outer realms. These space-time portals led to the outer realms. Although they had not been opened, the aura that seeped out of them already made them feel indescribably familiar. The primordial world was tens of thousands of times better than the outer realms. The abundance of cultivation resources was beyond the imagination of the outer realms. However, the outer realms were where they were born. After all, it was their hometown. How could they treat the outer realms as a completely unfamiliar place? Seeing Gu Ling's expression change, Luo Fu knew what he was thinking. He glanced at him and said, "Fifth junior brother, you are a living being from the outer realms. I'm sure you know these otherworldly demons better than us. I'm afraid we'll have to rely on you when we enter the virtual world. Guling's expression changed slightly when he heard Luo Fu's words. However, after a while, he nodded and said, "Second senior brother, don't worry. I know what I should do and what I shouldn't do." "That's good. Let's set off together." As the second senior brother, Luo Fu had the highest status among everyone present, so he naturally made the decision. After he finished speaking, everyone nodded and agreed. They turned into rays of light and returned to the Seeking Cave. The only place that was absolutely safe in the primordial world was probably Luo Fan's cave abode. They wanted to enter the virtual world, but their real bodies were still in the primordial world. Naturally, they needed to find a completely safe place. After the few of them returned to the Seeking Cave, they activated the mantra that Luo Fan had imparted to them. Instantly, a mental projection split out and entered the virtual world. At that moment, the virtual world was filled with an oppressive and exciting atmosphere. It was as if infinite power was brewing and preparing for a shocking change. When they entered the place, they were instantly detected by Hong Jun. Hong Jun naturally had to give these junior brothers and sisters the care that other living beings did not have. Immediately, a force formed in the void out of nowhere and directly acted on them. Amidst the distortion of the void, they traversed hundreds of millions of light years and appeared in the depths of the demon-killing domain, where Hong Jun was. When they saw Hong Jun, they bowed and greeted him. Although the matter was urgent, it was not that they did not have time to greet him. Hong Jun nodded and said to them, "You guys came at the right time. I'm short of manpower here. This demon-killing battle is of great importance. There cannot be any accidents. Second junior brother, guard this place. Third junior sister, guard this place." Hong Jun did not stand on ceremony and arrange tasks for them. He directly sent them to some of the weaker spots in the demon-killing domain that were easier to break through. He also gave them a certain amount of domain authority. Although this demon-killing domain was perfect and mysterious, it was only a domain after all. It cannot be perfect. If some spots suffered too much impact, it could cause serious consequences and affect the operation of the entire demon-killing domain. Therefore, there had to be a powerful force guarding and suppressing that spot. Luo Fu and the others saw that Hong Jun had only said a few words before they were instantly separated. The distance between them was at least tens of thousands of light years.